Okay, calling the Select Board meeting to order, Monday, December 11th, 6 o'clock. First item on the agenda are budgets. We're doing the budgets for Town Clerk and Select Board between 6 and 7. I've talked to Fritz, he'll be here in a couple minutes. He had his start time for 7, but he'll be here shortly. Dean, who are we doing first? We're doing Town Clerk. Would you like to walk through, yeah, you want to, Mary, you want to go through? What, do we have a handout or is it in the budget you've?
It was in your boxes. It was, Mary put them in your boxes.
This revised one you
But,
want, Mary?
no, this one only says Select Board though.
Yeah, this is on front. I took my full packet, so it wasn't attached to the packet. Thank you. I did see this, though. Okay. So we have, or I do, the Town Clerk Treasurer Budget Summary, Hold Harmless Estimate, which is, and then the Health Plan Selection. Okay, sorry. Health Central, and then like a NIMRIC revised,
Well, that I have. That's,
Yeah.
and what, yours is dated what?
1 p.m., 12/6.
1 p.m., 12/6. Good. I think we all have the same. Everybody's in order? Okay.
So revenues are first, and delinquent tax, penalty and interest, penalty is at 15,000, interest is at 10,000. And it's a decrease because really as a result of a total delinquent tax list of being much less than typical.
So is there a comparison to make going back to the old one, or do I read that below? Outstanding.
Outstanding penalty as of the end of this month is $17,814. That's the most I could possibly collect at this moment right now if I collected the delinquent taxes that were owed on everything. But when you're doing the budget, you are also, you have part of, you have November of 2018, what happens in November of 2018. So I'm just estimating a lower number because overall the delinquent tax list is lower. It's nothing I can say, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to get. Just saying I have less delinquent tax out there, and so the revenues for the penalty and interest should be lower. And when you look at if you look at the budget and you see for 16-17, you see those big numbers of 36,000 in interest and 28,000 in penalty. That's only a reflection of 7 properties that were up for tax sale, and 6 out of 7 were all collected on. And those I do not have, at this point, I don't even have anybody that I would be able to put up for tax sale, so the revenues need to be lower. Good?
Yep.
Okay. Thompson's Point rent is a little tricky. We just went under, or we just had the reappraisal of the land done, and the total value was reduced to $42,774,900. I think the percent it decreased by was in the 13% range. The rent that we get is calculated using the fair market value, multiplying it by the non-residential tax rate by 105%. So the tricky part is trying to figure out what the non-residential tax rate will be for 18-19. And so what we're trying to figure out is what the state of Vermont will be doing in that time period. So when I first did this spreadsheet, I was using a very small increase in the non-residential tax rate from like $1.72 to $1.74, giving us a total revenue of $780,000. Since then, the state has sent out a little, I don't know what you call it, that says we're looking at a 9.4% increase in our base education rates. So,
Can I ask you a question on that? So we agreed to consolidate. Isn't there an offsetting reduction for us because we voted consolidate year 1, year 2, year 3?
I believe that you probably should be asking this question to the Champlain Valley School District
Okay.
Board people,
Okay,
because all the state is saying right now is that their education fund, all their surplus is gone.
okay.
I don't know where it went. And so they throw out this 9.4 cent increase. The other thing that comes into play is the CLA. In other words, if the state says, oh, our base rate is going to be $1.60 and our CLA is 100%, then our tax rate is going to be $1.60. If our CLA is less than 100%, then that tax rate is adjusted upwards.
Yep.
So we're guessing that they're going to raise it 9.4 cents. We're guessing at what our CLA is going to be. We don't want to overstate the revenue. So I looked at it with that 9.4 cent increase, and then I looked at it with just slightly less. I think that we would be better off at the 9.4 cent increase. You're up to 813,000 in revenue, which I think could be overstating it. So I think we should do 805, which is not in this budget. This needs to be corrected after getting that
Okay.
stuff from the state.
So right now, in this budget, you have 780, and you're saying that should be 805.
Yeah. The 780 was before we got that publication from the state saying, by the way,
Right.
we have no money left.
So that includes the state announced
Increase.
increase.
So if you guys are good with that, we can change that to 805.
Yep.
Mary, I have a slightly off-topic question about Thompson's Point rent. The decision to use this calculation and the predictive end of it, of what the state is going to do with the tax, how long has that been the system?
Forever.
And that's what a select board at some point decided to do?
The
Well-
leases are calendar year. The
So
rents
it's-
are this calculation. We are budgeting at a time when we don't know the tax rate. Like, we typically don't know the tax rate from the state until closer to March, maybe?
Yeah. I guess I'm just wondering if there'd be any downside exposure to biting the bullet one year, having a freeze, and changing the rent policy to actually just mirror last year's tax that we do know. And it would always be the previous year, which would be a static number. It would change. It could go up 9%, but they wouldn't get that until 9 months later. And then this predictive process wouldn't have to happen. It'd be exact.
What are you saying?
We would use the previous year's set rate every year to determine the rent, and it would be known 9 months beforehand. There'd be a year where it would be the same as it was previous year. After that, it would mirror whatever changes happened with the state property taxes.
I guess the intent of the select board, the way they wrote the way the rent was calculated in the leases was to mirror how people are taxed and have the tax rate and the assessment.
9 months of the same year rather than 3 months. Because it's just not, the leases are in a disconnect with the tax rate assessment, right? We set the lease rate in January, but taxes are due in November. So there's that offset, and instead of predicting it, they still would be, it would just be 8 months delayed instead of guessing 2-3 months in advance. Could guess wrong too, whereas you'd never guess wrong if it was.
Well, you can discuss this as a select board. I mean,
Yeah, that's why I said it's off topic. I just was wondering the history of it from,
forever.
yeah, forever. Thanks.
So what you're saying then, we'd be putting in the 802 from the prior year.
Yeah, it'd be a known value rather than
You'd have to
guessing
correct the
every year.
leases,
Right, it would take, yeah,
all of them.
which could happen with
And
the
then if there's a significant increase, when do we catch the increase?
8 months later, the next year.
The following budget year.
So after, 1 year, it would be the same as, everyone would be paying the same amount fairly. It would just be delayed instead of advanced. But it'd still be for a 12-month period. It's not like they'd be paying any less.
So the 9.4% increase this year would be the next year.
Yeah, or, right,
So you'd be a year behind on the tax rate because you'd know what it is.
right. And the homeowners would know too, rather than
So
one.
the extremes
Guess
aren't
if-
going to hurt you?
Well, it would just have to happen to be like really fair, you'd want to do it in a year where there wasn't a huge change in the tax rate. That way, it'd almost be unnoticeable as far as equity between residential and non-residential.
But still, if there was ever a huge increase in the tax rate and then you guys didn't adjust that particular year, you'd have to eat that adjustment for that year, even if it was down the road.
If we change the system. No, because they would get it 3 months later, they'd start paying that change for 12 months. So they'd be paying it for 2 months in November and December, even though the tax rate had changed, the rents wouldn't change until their 12 months of paying it would up. They'd still be,
I think this is a topic for another conversation because it's not 9 months because the fiscal year starts July 1st.
oh yeah,
Right, so, but I think it's definitely a topic for another time. 'Cause it'll be long and drawn out.
And the point is that the non-tax revenues that we are budgeting and estimating, we are estimating everything.
right, where this will be known.
There's no precise thing here at all, so anyhow. For example,
And
current
we
use.
don't get a precise number until when?
June, July.
I know what I'm going to collect in Thompson's Point rents in April. In April of 2018, I will know, is that right? I will
When the
know the
school-
rent that I'm going to receive in 18-19. And that's why I can say to you guys, which I've said before, hey, just so you know, we're going to have 60,000, extra revenue because of blah, 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 or we're going to be a little short because of, the other way, so.
Are we mirroring the incentive that, because of the consolidation? We got,
Mary thought we'd probably have to ask the state.
Okay.
If their 9%
Well, the school-
actually
the school
accounted
board.
for our
Okay.
reduced incentive.
Last year, we had a huge decrease in
Right.
the state rate. I mean, our total tax rate for a homestead this year is 180 compared to 160 last year. Most of that is the state of Vermont, not the town of Charlotte. So what would be interesting for you to know is back in the day when they were trying to get the consolidation vote to go through, someone had a chart that projected you're going to get this much of a tax break in the first year, this much in the second, this much in the third. So maybe you would want to ask a board member where that is so that you can see what it is they said we were going to get and what it is we really get. So current use, you have the calculation sheet for that. It's merely, that whole calculation comes from the state, so you can estimate. Supposedly, it's supposed to help us offset all the lands that we have in current use, which 62,000 is really a small number, but it's okay. The pilot payment is payment in lieu of taxes from the state of Vermont, and they give us two payments, one for state-owned buildings and one for the state-owned land. And we used to get, a little bit more for this in the $25,000 range, but they have recalculated how they pay out. So this year, I'm pretty sure the $14,137 for state-owned land is a good number, and the $840 is a slight estimate. So I put in $14,977. Okay. Railroad tax is like nothing. 50. I put in $50 last year. We got $38. I don't even know where that even comes from. It's state money. Barber Cemetery is a very small amount. I put in 100. We only got $22 last year, but this comes from the trustee of public funds. One of their accounts, the beneficiary, part of the proceeds goes to the Barber Cemetery. So our trustees are our accounts are going up. They're higher than they have been in the past. So I put a big $100 in there.
Where's this 20?
Clerk's revenue, second page of the budget. The first one is the vault clerk fees. That's mostly just due to getting rid of that town clerk miscellaneous line. For some reason, I thought was a good idea, but really was not a good idea. So in 16-17, the revenue we got as miscellaneous was like $1,200. So I just consolidated it all into vault fees. That's people coming in the vault, being charged so much an hour. It's copies, it's certified copies, that kind of thing. It doesn't change all that much. Recording, $38,000, there's no change to that. We still just received $10 a page for recording. There's discussion that in the 2019 or 2018 legislature that they're going to request, the clerks are going to request that fee goes up. But where it's going to go and if it goes, nobody really knows, so I'm just going to leave that at $38,000. They've talked about all things all over the place, $15 a page, $50 for the first page, so much the second page, crazy all over the place. So, dog licenses, 2,200, that's like the same. It's the same 400 some odd people that register their dogs out of the couple thousand dogs that are here. Hunting and fishing, $50, that was so tiny. We only get $1.50 out of every license that we sell, and you can do it online, so people do their own online. We don't really get that much revenue from that. Marriage licenses, the same. The state gets the lion's share of the money there. So $300, too much. So that's it for us. Overall, it's just a very tiny increase in our revenue. Then we jump down to highways, state highway money. And I just put in I just put the same amount that we are currently getting. We have a quarterly revenue of $48,718. So I basically put that same number in there. Comes out to 194,870 for the year.
Yep.
Court fines are at 11,500. And that's just looking at what we've collected per month this season 17-18, which is lower than what we have been. And I'm not really quite sure why, because it's the same, I think it's the same contract.
These are speeding tickets and stuff?
Yep. Let's see, oops, my next one. Interest income, that's just based on actuals, $300. Nothing too exciting there. Sorry, going back and forth. We have a small or miscellaneous income of $650. That is mostly liquor licenses for I think there's 5 places in town that get the liquor licenses. And then maybe a tiny obscure miscellaneous revenue that might come in from somewhere. I put a small amount of money in the VLCT equipment grant. That's for a new desk for Christina. In the past, the VLCT equipment grant has paid for half of the cost of those, those desks that go up and, okay. So 187 would be half of what we'd like to buy for next year. I wasn't sure if you guys had already talked about the reappraisal fund transfer that you usually do. Take money out of the reappraisal fund and use it for assessors' costs. So the recommendation would be to put 15,000 in. The fund currently has 21,647, which will be reduced to 6,647 after this year's transfer of 15,000. And the state typically deposits around 16,800 March of each year into that reappraisal fund for the listers. The only year you put more, I think you put more into that this current fiscal year because of the $5,000 for Thompson's Point reappraisal. Usually you put 15.
Where do we see that money on your budget? I don't see the 15,000. Where's that?
Last page?
It's where? Last page on funds?
Did you find it?
No.
It's on page 3 of the budget, right kind of in the middle, where it says transfers in to the general fund, 100-2830.
Yep.
The ag lease is up a little bit. I just looked at the contracts that we have right now, and I have $3390 for the park, $2,700 for the Galbraith piece, $375 for Burns, Thompson's Point for $2,500. I don't know if those are, pretty sure those are correct. I think the Thompson's Point for $2,500 is the newer one that's increasing the revenue from our typical amount for ag leases. move on to expense. In the budget, it's page 5. Town clerk. For salary, I just put in the current 17-18, just so there's a number there, 68,266. The assistant clerk salary line is using the 18-19 pay grid. Of course, there's no cost of living applied because we don't have that yet. Mileage is the same at 100. It doesn't look like we ever really use mileage, but I suppose it's for that odd seminar that might be farther away. Telephone at 2,200, that's just the historical cost of the phone. 675 is new for equipment, and that is the 375 for Christina's desk. And I put $300 in there to replace the HP printer that's in my little office, which is trying to die. Seminars down a couple $100 because we tend to do more webinars than actually go out, and the webinars are really inexpensive. Supplies, no change, 4,100 based on historical costs. Memberships, manuals, $100. That's no different. Service contracts, those include the annual service and disaster recovery contracts for our NEMRIC software. The current year, the total for those is $2,049. NEMRIC doesn't typically have much of an increase, if any increase. Copier contract is $1,704. And then there's just a little bit added extra in there for sometimes we need a little programming help from NEMRIC for the Thompson's Point rent and sewer modules that they set up for us. But overall, the contracts are down a couple $100. Treasurer, supplies, $925, it's up a little. That's just a reflection of the cost of checks increasing. $15,000 for the audit. I wasn't sure if that's what's the contract price or not. Do you know, Dean?
I don't, I'll check.
We got a 3-year agreement, right?
Right.
This is the first of the 3.
Second.
Oh, we just completed?
We just completed the first.
So we're doing our second round. I thought this was the first of the second.
That would be
Well,
the,
third, budgeting the third, actually.
that's budgeting the third?
FY19 will be,
Second, right?
they'll be looking at FY18, but it'll be FY19 fee, so yeah, second.
It's what, the second?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, if you can just check on that, because I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Elections, 3,200, that is because we have, in 18-19, we'll have the August primary, we'll have the November general election. And that is paying for the workers, and at least for the November, not for the primary, but for the general election, that is paying for programming of the tabulator. Town meeting, 3,500, based on the costs that we have for the workers, the sound system, the fact that we have a March and an April vote, based on historical costs. Town report expenses, typically this line includes the town report and postage to mail out at $5,500. That's more you, Dean, I'm just guessing. Let's see. Then we are going to move on to page 7 of the budget, to delinquent tax collector. On the salary, I'm asking for a $200 increase. Hasn't been increased in the past couple of years. And I collected $307,000 in delinquent taxes for you, just saying. The legals are an estimate of $1,000. That is when we have a tax sale, that's when I use the attorney. If the property that's up for tax sale sells, then those legal fees come back to the town. So on the revenue side, I don't know if I said this, on the revenue side, there's also $1,000 for delinquent tax legals. So if there's an expense of $1,000, there should be a revenue of $1,000. Or next line down on that same page are employee benefits. So this is estimating the total payroll for 18-19. So I went through everyone and I used the 18-19 pay grid. I estimated, even though it's not final, I estimated a 1.9% cost of living.
Which is what we saw for the December report, the 1.9.
December's not, it's like
It
through
came out in
November.
December, so
Yeah.
it probably will be that or 2% in that range.
Okay, so all these numbers are based using that figure. The step increases are in there, so the total payroll I'm using is $556,919. It gives you Social Security of $34,550. And it gives you the down, I'm skipping a couple, to Medi expense, using that same number, it gives you $8,075. Health insurance is a whole separate sheet. I don't know if you want to go through that or if you want me to just kind of summarize.
Yeah, what changes?
The way I do it is I'm taking all the people that are currently receiving health insurance. They have selected their new plans for 2018. I take what their full-time status, part-time status, whatever percent is that the town covers. So health insurance is a calendar year, so we know the premiums that we are going to have from July 1st, 2018 to December of 2018. There's still the unknown because we have a couple employees that you're going to be hiring that you don't know what they might take, but we can't do anything about that.
Do you put in the person that was in that position there?
Neither one of those people had health insurance.
Okay.
So, for using the 2018 premiums, the town pays $9,272 and some change a month. If I take that and I say, okay, overall this is going to be an 8% increase when January 2019 happens and we're doing the same thing but same plan, whatever. And you come up with an annual cost of $115,722. We have the HRA, which we have the high deductible HRA. So with that, I just look and see how I have in the past deposited into that fund. And so based on the past, I estimate $50,000 for the HRA to come to a grand total of $165,000. The benefit of the HRA is that that is town money, so depending on how healthy everybody is during the year, the money is there, available for the employee to use, but whatever is not used stays with the town.
Is the HRA, is the town money spent first? Or does the employee put any money into the HRA?
90/10, all at the same time. Every bill.
Okay, so it's divided percentage from day one.
Yeah.
Until the out-of-pocket expenses are maxed.
Okay.
And then the insurance picks it up.
Okay.
The retirement, again, I look at the payroll that is going to be out there for 18-19. Anybody who works 24 hours a week or more is required to be part of the retirement plan. So I look at that batch of employees. And for this calculation, I used the salaries that we had for our zoning administrator, our past zoning administrator, and our past senior director, just because they were both part of retirement. So to get a better, because our new people, no matter what, they both will be part of the retirement program. So you just look at the projected payroll. The town contributes 5.5%. The employees contribute 4.875%. And when you look at the gross payroll and you multiply it by that 5.5, you get the 24,710.
Is there a period, like to be vested
Is there
into
what?
this? Is there a period that, like a lot of things, is there a period to wait before you can get on it? Or do
No,
you
as soon as
get
you-
on it right on when you
You get on it
hired?
as soon as you're 24 hour, it's, I can't remember off the top of my head, it's 24 hours a week, or it's so much, so many hours a month, or it's not for someone who's sometimes 24 and sometimes 22 and could be
You have to have
20.
an average?
Has to be 24 or more, like religiously. The unemployment compensation, $995. That's just, they pretty much send us the estimate. VLCT sends it to us. The IMED vision plan, I looked at as basically having not any increase to it, $900. The town pays the same percentage for the IMED as they do for the health insurance, and the employee contributes the same into that. The dental plan, the town pays for. There's a slight increase in the fees for the 2018-19 year. And then back in the day, there was a discussion about whether or not we would like to ask the select board to have an orthodontic rider added. And I think you all said that should be talked about at budget time. I'm not sure. So that's why you have the rate sheet in your packet. If I went through and looked at all the people right now that get the dental insurance, the rider would add an additional $576 a year. There's not the option that some people can take the rider and some people can't take the rider. Everybody has to take the rider. And so this would be something for the select board to make a decision on.
Would this also be 90/10 for out-of-pocket?
No, dental insurance is 100%. I forget the reason why. Do you remember?
Because it's a small amount and then it's zero.
I don't.
Usually dental covers, well, 1,200 and then they cover nothing.
Oh, you mean
The insurance.
yeah, it's something like
Unlike
that.
healthcare, which will cover you indefinitely.
It's 15? Oh, maybe it's on the sheet.
The rider is an additional 15.
You're saying.
For
the,
orthodontic.
Yeah, that orthodontic rider, there's an additional, I think they covered the additional 1,500 that isn't covered by the regular dental insurance.
Yeah,
You hit the limit and then they don't pay.
Right,
okay.
there is no
And
insurance.
actually, before you hit the limit, they still, depending on the procedure, only pay.
you can only have so many crowns a year.
No more than
But they
32.
pay like 50% of certain procedures anyways, and the orthodontic would have additional coverage for some of the procedures that are not covered now.
When they say lifetime maximum, they mean annual or they mean
No,
lifetime?
lifetime. One time, yeah.
Well, it's not like
But-
you're going to have orthodontia over and over and over.
Right.
Hopefully.
But we pay it
Get your
annually.
braces and be done with it.
But we pay it annually, but it's a lifetime rider, so if we quit using the rider after 2 years,
I don't know.
okay?
It's something to look into.
Yeah,
All I
I-
know is that some people would like to have the orthodontic rider, and the select board has to make that decision, so.
Of the 9, what do you think sum is? 3?
Pardon?
Of the 9 people who have health care, who are looking at the health plans, you think it's a third of them, or half, or?
I don't know, because I don't know where, people are with, there's a few people that have kids. I really don't know. And there's, this rider covers adult orthodontia. I don't know who's out there. I don't really know what they
Okay.
want.
Yeah, thanks.
The next section on this printout is just the donations, and I don't think that we really need to go through that, just for you to know that that's on page 10 of the budget. Those numbers are just everything that people have sent in for requests. It's up to you to go through the list and say yay, nay, or what is this, or the new one for this year is the one on the bottom, the Vermont Family Network, for $1,000.
Did we receive a written request?
Yes. I think that every time I've gotten one of those, I've copied them and put them in your boxes. Pretty sure. I don't know. I don't remember. The list is too big. Because there's the Vermont Family Network, there's the Child Care Resources, there's the Lund Home. I honestly can't tell you the difference.
While we're just on that topic, I'm wondering if, although it is a donation, Front Porch Forum should be broken out separately because it's a for-profit rather than a not-for-profit. But,
There's no value next to that or the Charlotte News on this summary.
okay.
By the way, I mean, we can break them out, I'm just pointing out that we need to make a decision on how much we want to put there. Front Porch Forum last year was 200, and Charlotte News was 500.
We do pay the Charlotte News.
But I'm just looking at the new year and the budget that you have it zeroed.
I know, it's because if there is no requests that have come in yet, those lines are going to be zeros. It doesn't mean that that entity doesn't want any money, it just means that we haven't received it yet.
Okay.
But my comment was, we pay the Charlotte News. Just so you know.
When you say pay for advertising.
We pay
you-
bills. Like we pay for the senior center inserts.
Oh, we pay the Charlotte News. We pay to have the Charlotte News put those in.
Yeah. Okay, the next is going to be Town Hall, which starts on page 11 of the budget. So the maintenance line is, you can see it's a big decrease from down to $7,000, and the only reason that it's like that is because I broke out the custodian line. Like the library has a separate line for custodian, the senior center has a separate line for custodian, and I just thought, well, maybe ours should be the same. So then that, what's in the maintenance line are annual contracts for climate systems, Orkin Pest Control, Fire Protect, Sunray Security, Maple Leaf Carpet Cleaners, because when we get new carpet, we're going to be cleaning them occasionally. And then there's money in there for Patterson Fuels for service calls. Miscellaneous electrician, Vermont Water, plumbers. And Dean, I wasn't sure about the Lincoln applied 1,600 for them.
Yeah, water.
So, yeah, that's what that is. Custodian line of 6,000 is higher than our current rate we're paying of $375 a month. I just put additional funds in there in case you wanted to do, we needed to do window washing or something that you don't do all the time, but every once in a while you gotta go through. Postage, 6,000, that's just based on what we're using. The equipment, I'm not quite sure what you would like to do between the equipment line and computer service. So the computer service includes $1,150 that we pay a year for web hosting. Our current net support is $693 a month, which is $83.16. And the computer service line usually includes any kind of troubleshooting that needs to happen. But I don't really know what the plan is for the equipment. Like, should that line be like software and like when we have to do we just did a net server warranty. That's up to you guys. I don't know where you're at with the server. I really don't know what to put there. So that's not,
So we're going to meet with Simquest in early January, is that what you said? Yeah. That should
Help us figure that out.
determine,
Yep.
but if we separate, the point was if we separate out computer service, just be like web hosting, net support, and troubleshooting, those, we would have a good idea of really what that is a year. And then the others, because now I think it's kind of lumped all in together and it's hard to really see what's what.
okay?
Supplies, 1,800, no change. Trash removal, we just got some new rates, so the 1,500 should probably be 1,600 with the new rates. Utilities, 4,500, no change. Fuel, oil, 3,000, no change. Then if you go down to the bottom of page 12, under miscellaneous, the first line is insurance for 50,000. Our current year insurance was $44,088, which was $42,460 for our property and casualty, and $33,227 for workman's comp. We got a credit of $1,699. The estimate for 18-19 is based on just saying, okay, we're not going to have any credits, and the possibility of a higher workman's comp contribution, which could be attributed to senior center program instructors. The electricity is just based on actuals, flea market, 350, Streetlights, 1,500. Museum electricity, 350. Health officer is your decision. That's basically been a $1,300 salary, paid monthly to the zoning administrator. That's what it's been.
Been kind of a stipend you pay monthly. Yep.
3,000 for the animal control officer. I don't remember if you guys already did that or not, but that's you as well, of course. Dogs miscellaneous of 900. That includes our $600 annual contract for Comfort Hill, $225 for dog licensing supplies. And there's a little extra in case for mileage. We put extra in there last year for mileage for the animal control officer, although I don't think she's ever used it, but it's there. Traffic enforcement, that's you guys. The 30,000 is just based on our current contract. Then if you go down to the bottom of page 13, taxes and dues, these are basically things that are just sent to us. So VLCT has a slight increase to 5373. Chittenden County Regional Planning has actually a slight decrease, down to 10,719. And the county tax, we don't really have that number yet. It's estimated at 44,000, which is, that's a good number to use. And the last thing I put on here was a transfer to reserve funds for transfer to record restoration, which we are allowed to use $1 out of our $10 that we get per page for recording. So if I am saying I'm going to receive $38,000 in recording revenue, the request is to transfer $3,800 to the Record Restoration Fund, which is used for record restoration and vault improvements. I've used it for buying map files and purchasing shelving and preserving the records. So that's what that is.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody else? Thank you. So we have a few things to work on our side. Do we want to? Oh, there is more?
No, I said you have some homework.
We have some homework. Should we go through the select board now or defer it?
I think probably another time. I thought an hour might be too much time, but apparently it wasn't enough. The only one small item is we may have a grant, back roads grant this year, which would be both on the revenue side and then an expense on the highway budget side. It's a few $1,000s, so it's not a huge amount, but I don't remember the exact amount. I can look it up, but they're usually pretty good about funding the application, approving applications that are submitted.
Okay. So we can defer the selectmen part either later tonight or at another time. See how things go. So, 7 o'clock, are there adjustments to the agenda? Are there public comments at this time? Yes.
I think the select board should publicly thank Steve Mack and Team Line Striping for striping the parking lot yet again this year without a charge to the town. He comes and stripes it and marks off the handicap spot and everything else, and renews it every year, and he never charges us. So I thought you guys should be aware that he does that good deed and should probably publicly thank him at some point in time.
Thank you, and we thank Steve Mack. Yes, we appreciate that for the yellow markings in the town parking lots. Thanks, parking lot. So we're about to do, or we're going to start right now, the public hearing, town plan We have an hour set aside for discussion. This is the first public hearing. The Planning Commission has submitted this to the Select Board. The Select Board will have 2 hearings, and depending how things go, we may or may not be in a position to have this ready for town meeting in March. So let's see how we start. We want to take comments from the public? Is that the best way to start? On the town plan? You're all here for the town plan? What's your suggestion?
I guess I wondered if you have the planning commission provide just a brief explanation of their process and timeline and the work that was done and whatnot.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. The microphone is for the VCAM. It doesn't amplify anything in here. Thank you.
So this is the rewrite that we've been working on is from the 2008 town plan. We started the process back, I want to say it was in 2012, and at that point, as a result of a lot of input from folks in the town, we realized that we really needed to do a complete rewrite of the town plan. At that point, statute required that the town plan be updated or readopted every 5 years. So in 2013, we readopted the 2008 town plan because we knew that there was no way we were going to have it redone in order to meet that deadline. So that's that occurred in 2013. We held our first public hearing in 16, but prior to that, there were a lot of meetings, work sessions, workshops, where we got significant input from the Energy Committee, the Conservation Committee, the public, townsfolk in Charlotte. And again, as I mentioned, we had our first hearing in September of 16. At that time, we established our goal was to try to get the rewrite done so that it would be ready, hopefully, for a town vote in March of 18. That was our target. So we continued working on it and holding sessions. Typically, we had work sessions every third Thursday of the month. We allocated time, gathered additional comments from the public. The beginning of 2017, we put together a responsiveness summary, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet that listed all of the comments that we had received from that first hearing. And we used that as a guide to go through that, and then we indicated our comments on that spreadsheet, and that's been available on the town website. We had additional discussions with the Energy Committee in June. I think we had 2 or 3 meetings, and that was specific to the adoption by the state of Act 174. So we wanted to incorporate at least an alert in the town plan in this rewrite that said that we were going to be working on eventually getting, folding what we needed to fold into the town plan regarding Act 174, which basically would give the town what the state calls substantial deference when it comes to the installation of alternative energy facilities in town. That's about it, really. There was a lot of input, a lot of rewrite that came from the Energy Committee. They put a lot of work into this. But again, we had a lot of input throughout the past 5 years, really, from various committees and folks in town. So as Lane said, we forwarded it to the Select Board. The Select Board has 2 hearings, and it's certainly our hope that we'll get it to the town for a vote.
Thank you. A lot of hours into updating and the work you guys have done. Comments from the audience that have looked at this? Yes. Clark?
Am I supposed to use that?
Just, you can just put it in front of you. That's why when people want to listen to this on the recording, they can hear it.
There's a couple areas I want to talk about. I think I'll start with East Charlotte Village.
Okay?
On page I-4 or 1-4, under Charlotte Tomorrow, it does say the outcomes, number 3 says the outcomes of the East Charlotte Village Planning Project will be considered by the Planning Commission when proposing future land use regulations. And as you all probably know, that East Charlotte Village study was done in 2010. And it says that, I think, another place in here. What I'm going to be asking you to consider tonight is to put more emphasis on that. For example, the West Village Wastewater Study Committee is listed as the town will develop a framework for moving forward with the work completed by the Charlotte Wastewater Committee. And in the town plan, and I think it's because of the hard work of the committee, there's a lot of language about how the town should move forward with that. It's a priority, it's important. But yet, there's no comparable language for the East Charlotte potential changes. Additionally, if you look on page 1-25, you'll see a map that concerns me greatly. Backing up, in the East Charlotte Village study from 2010, there were some general vector maps, dotted lines, and discussion talking about the expansion of East Charlotte Village. And in map number 12 in your town plan here, there is a map that shows where development should be focused, and there's a big dotted circle around East Charlotte Village that is kind of equidistant from the four corners. I can't tell you what page that's on, but in the table of contents, it's map 12. But yet on page 1-25, you've got a very specific, partial specific figure showing East Charlotte Village. And the boundaries here are nothing like what the East Charlotte Study Committee recommended in 2010. In this diagram, the village is all on the south side of Heinsberg Road. And I don't know where this specific map came from. I don't think, guys and gals, I don't think, Planning Commission, that it was in the draft that you had your public hearing on. At least I don't recall it. Yeah, I don't recall. So I had relied on the map number 12, that just shows a dotted line around East Charlotte Village, and on the language, and I had testified and you included it, that said we should be doing something about the East Charlotte Village study from 2010. So I'm asking the Select Board to look at the map on page 1-25, and generally speaking, town plans are general, and then when you do the zoning regulations, you make a specific map that is based on the policies. And I guess what I would say is I object to this map being in the town plan, and I guess I would also point out some of the reasons I object to it. Frank, I don't understand why you guys are not in the village anymore. Tenney family, I don't understand that.
No idea. Good
And
question.
It kind of isolates away from the village. If you look at that map, I can't tell if Kerry's store is in there, but it looks like Tenney's is not, right?
And they're not.
Yeah.
Well, and I agree with Clark on the map he presented to us for the future development map that he gave us here that's, got the, it's basically squared off. It's getting all quadrants around the intersection.
Right. So anyway, I don't know the origin of the map. And I also don't know, I'll address this to the Planning Commission, I don't know if that's appropriate for the West Village either. Now, in the West Village map on page 25, there is an orange line that looks like it's maybe an addition to the village as it stands. But there again, this is a very, very specific map, and essentially predetermines or ties the hands of redoing the zoning regulations. So I would think that the map on map number 12 would be adequate for the plan. But I also would encourage you to strengthen the language relating to the East Shalott study, because I think after 7 years, it should be a priority. And I'll give you one specific example of how this has affected me, for example. And that is that in 2010, when the planning study was done, there was a woman, and it doesn't matter who she was, who said in the hearing, she said, well, we'll do this study, and it'll be one of these studies that sits on the shelf and gathers dust, and I don't know if we're doing anything that amounts to anything or if we're wasting our time. And I raised my hand at that point and said, as somebody that owns land in the village district, I am waiting for the town to decide what it wants here in this rewrite and then plan accordingly. Part of the reason the town has a controversial solar array near East Shalott Village is because that 5-year town plan cycle was skipped. Nothing was done about East Shalott. I'm paying $5,800 a year in property tax on a vacant piece of land that's not in current use. And if you're in farming in Shalott, you can't afford to farm land. It's not farmland. It's not in current use. So for the last 7 years, I continued to pay $5,800 a year on that piece of land that when we all worked together and conserved the bean farm in 2011, all the powers that be believed that we shouldn't conserve that meadow because it was going to become part of the village. And so I guess what I'm saying is that if it's valuable to the town for that to be part of the village, we need to get on with it. Otherwise, I'm 62 in 5 years. I don't know that I'm not going to pay $5,800 a year for the next 5 years. Something will happen to it, and it'll either be guided by this town plan, or if the town takes another pass on it, it'll be done based on it being rural agricultural. It'll be a couple of state lots, and that'll be the end of it. So I would encourage you in the strategy section, which is on 1-19. Let's see, no, that's not right. I've got the site in here somewhere. I would encourage you to say that implementing that study is a high priority. Because if you look at all the things in the strategies, there's hundreds of them. And I think it's important, if it's of high priority to the town, the town say so in the town plan, and then we can all work on the zoning after we have a new town plan. There's something else I want to.
Do you know where that strategy is? So I'm looking at the index. I mean, I'm trying to mark these spots that you brought up. If you look at the index.
1-52.
It's on page, okay, the 152 is the strategy?
1-52 looks
Okay,
like
yeah.
it. And that's where it says, "The outcome of the East Charlotte Village planning project will be considered by the Planning Commission." And the Planning Commission was very active, spent lots of hours helping with that study. So I think it's time to say that's a priority, to do that.
Okay.
I'm taking a lot of time here. There's one agricultural thing I'd like to raise, if that's okay.
Yep.
And just to get back to your village thing, if you look on the map of the map 11, I mean, it's got a totally different set of markings for the East Charlotte Village.
That's the one with the dotted circle?
No,
No,
it's the one with
that's
it's the one with the bars. It's got yellow bars on it. It's got Sheehan Green in it, and
Yeah.
it's got all the way back from Fisher's and all the way up to the swamp. All
Well,
of
we
it.
always thought it should go to the swamp.
Yeah, all of it, and it has the village commercial that goes up the road. All the way up Jackson Hill Road.
Well, we would want to be consistent in
Well,
the document.
that's just my point. I was just saying that this is an inconsistency. Just in their own mapping.
Now, on agriculture, there's one very important point I want to make, and that's on page 1-19. Strategies number 10. And I quote, "Charlotte endorses the use of required agricultural practices on local farms and sees itself as a partner in the implementation of these practices." Now, I want to hearken back to a public hearing that's filled this room a few weeks or a few months back, having to do with the Mount Philo hops and the agricultural practices. And you guys did the town a great service by bringing together Vermont Land Trust, the Agency of Agriculture, and so forth, to try to have a public education forum and discussion of agricultural practices. And at the end, I believe you said, Lane, something along the lines of, I'm sure glad we don't regulate these in town, and I wouldn't want to.
Right.
Is that approximately?
Yeah, yep.
And so having the town plan say that it sees the town as a partner in the implementation of these practices, I think that's diametrically opposed to what the town wants. It would
Well, the state overrules too, and the Department of Agriculture overrules what this comment says, right?
It does, but the suggestion would be that if we could get municipal delegation on those services, we'd take it and we'd regulate pesticides and manure spreading. And so I just would think it would be good to not have it in there, because I don't think we want that.
This is 11910. It's our getting involved in agricultural practices, which really isn't under our jurisdiction, is what we learned from the hops discussion.
And my final agricultural point is relatively minor, be on 1-17, key planning considerations, number 2. It says the amount of land in active agricultural production has been observed to have decreased over the years due to the conversion of farmland to residential subdivisions. That's actually not true. The number one reason for the reduction of farmed acres is the abandonment of pastures.
Is the what?
Abandonment of pastures.
What's that mean?
Land that used to have a fence around it and be grazed by animals
Yeah.
is no longer grazed by animals. Fritz, your property is a prime example of that. Half your property that's growing up to woods, it's got fence around it, and it used to graze animals. So the development of your parcel took up the 2 acres where your house is, but the abandonment of the pasture is probably between 150 and 175 acres. And so, you know, this is not an action item, so it probably doesn't matter.
Just the reason isn't
It's just the reason isn't accurate.
isn't residential subdivision, but you're saying it's abandoned pastures versus not being residential subdivisions.
Yeah, I mean, if the plan needs to go on and say that, you know, residential subdivisions have taken agricultural land too, that's
could say-
fine. It's just that it's not the number one.
You could put both
Reason.
in there, residential subdivisions and
Right.
abandoned pastures.
So I think we're very fortunate to have the planning commission and select board that we have in this town, the groups that feed into it, and the kind of open processes that everybody has carried out and encouraging public participation. So I want to thank everybody for that. And I'm sorry I didn't pick up the map when you guys were having your hearings. I just didn't see it.
Thanks, Clark.
Thank you.
I had a comment when he was talking about maps,
Yeah.
even in a little more general direction, is that there's nothing that tells you how to use all these maps. There used to be a rider on one of the, on the wildlife habitat map that said that this is to be used for, I don't remember the language, informational purpose or something, and that was dropped. With maps, with all of these lines and some of the comments in there, one could look at the maps and say, well, this designates, like Clark said, each particular piece is zoned this way, and, or other ways, and I don't think that they're accurate enough or should be used other than an advisory for informational purposes only.
I'm sorry, I picked up the beginning of what Clark sent it so quickly. Are we on to another topic now?
He's
No,
talking
we're
about the
talking
12
about maps.
that are the attached.
And as to how there's discrepancies, and I'm had a broader question as to how the maps should be used. They shouldn't be used as, there should be something that says they're used for informational or for concept or to develop the zoning, as you were talking about, but not to be considered as hard and fast rules.
Well, on map one, it basically says this map is not sufficient for delineation of features on the ground.
Well, it's got that little disclaimer in the corner.
Right.
But when one of these maps considers, I don't know which particular one, go to the one that I'm most familiar with is, for example, the linkage habitat on the wildlife
What number is
map.
that?
That would be, which one's the wildlife map?
It's up in the left-hand corner.
Map 6?
6. When I was on the Conservation Commission, I had an issue with that because there was data used to create that map that was never, the report was never completed. The information was never made made available to the public, but yet the results of it were used to make the map. So the result of that was a little section that came up when you looked at the map online that said this is just an advisory map. Because one could look at that map and say, well, geez, you're in this habitat area, you can't use this land to build or to do other things. And I think there should be at least a paragraph or some instruction in the Charlotte tomorrow as to how these maps are to be considered. Are they to be used altogether in conjunction with guiding development, not to be used to specifically prohibit development, or which parts of the map can be used to prohibit development and which ones can't? Kind of a general, what are the maps for?
Okay.
Could you ask for names?
Please, names for the recording. What's your name? We couldn't hear.
Isaiah Kiley.
Okay, that's not a amplification.
Isaiah Kiley.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe it's just that there be some kind of a headline with the maps indicating the maps are to be used in conjunction with field study and so forth like that, because I don't, I think it would be a shot in the dark to say the maps can be used accurately because it's sort of a very blown up version of something that's more detailed on the ground. So I don't know if that would be one idea.
Marty Ehrlich, Planning Commission. Just to feedback on Fritz's comment while we're on this line in the discussion, the habitat map is absolutely a planning map, advisory map. It's written that way in the plan, and there's also further language that describes how the Planning Commission goes about using the map in a more explicit, detailed way, meaning that we do site visits We get down at the site level, if you will, to do site visits to further understand what's significant there. But it's really more like a planning overlay layer where underneath, if we do see development proposed in those areas, we take a closer look. We don't say, get out of that area. We take a closer look and understand that, the site levels qualities, if you will, of the application.
Right, but according to Fritz's idea is that it's not just the planning commission that's looking at these maps. So
Anybody else? can-
anybody else could. I mean, the zoning administrator is going to have to look at these maps, the town planner, and the public are going to have to look at these maps, and they're going to look at these if they're in our town plan, and they're going to rely on them.
And if you could just summarize what you said in a paragraph and put it in the plan, that would cover most of my concerns, that it's used as a tool and not to, because some of them have specific parcel lines on it. And if you overlay those two, one could conceivably say, well, this map says on this parcel, this is here and it's, high public value for this and you can't do that. So I just,
Yes.
Bill Spooner, I just want to follow up on Clark's comments about the expansion of the East Charlotte Village north of Charlotte-Heinsberg Road. I'd like everybody to know that that area is already fairly developed. We're in Sheehan Green. Expansion into the village into our area might influence our community, and we would want to know about that as far as what that might entail. It's also important to know that right across the street is a successful working farm, and whether or not we want to discourage working agricultural uses in exchange for high-density, residential development is something that is significant. And then the other thing is that you can't see it on this map, but there are two significant wetlands and streams that run directly to the north, right in the area that Clark is thinking about expanding the village. I don't know the reason why the Planning Commission didn't include this in there, but these all could be reasons why that they didn't want to expand the East Charlotte Village north of Charlotte-Heinsberg Road.
Well, it's not the expansion that we're talking about. That's the way it was before. We're talking about how it's being actually reduced in size,
Well,
according to this map that's in here.
Well, there might be a reason why, and I'd be interested in hearing the reasons why if you say it's being reduced. It could be that this area is already significantly developed, and there's no reason to, put it in the village area. I know our community is already built out.
I think the map on, it's map 12, which is the future land use, that, I believe that is generally more representative of what came out of the East Village Committee. So I think what we need to do, we as a planning committee need to go back and look at that other map. I really don't know, maybe that map shouldn't even be in there, or we should just make a smaller version of 12 and put it in its place.
Other comments? Clark?
Cognizant of the fact that we're only supposed to address the chair, I wanted to attempt to answer Bill's question. First of all, the Sheehan Green area is already in the village district. And in terms of the subdivision being built out, other than Charlie Ferreira's lot, I believe it is, and the covenants or declarations that create a subdivision are going to control. So it's, but one of the things that you can see in that development is that Charlotte used to have a 2-acre minimum lot size, which is why many of the lots are 2 acres. Then Charlotte dropped that, and John Sheehan made the lots on the west side that are about 1 1/3 acres, and then put a common lot for the septic area rather than having all these septic easements scattering all over everybody's lots. So it just went to show that it probably created a better residential community under the newer regulations than the old regulations. In terms of that not being in the village district or whatever, and the farm across the road is primarily earns its living from being in the excavation business. And if you eliminate north of Heinsberg Road in the village district, you've just created an illegal business with Denton Construction. So I can tell you quite for sure that Steve Denton does not want to be taken out of the village district, and he uses most of his land for farming, and most of that land is under a conservation easement. However, the 3.7 acres right at the corner, 400 by 400, where the barn is and where his business is zoned village commercial, and if it wasn't, he couldn't even be there. So that's just a little history of kind of how the village district developed to this point.
Yes, Bill?
I suppose I have to follow up. I mean, he says that the farm is used as a primarily excavation. I won't dispute that he does use excavation, but there are cows on that property right now, so it is being used as an active agricultural operation. So I just want to reiterate that, if there's any change to our community as far as the zoning wise, our community would want to know about it in advance. That's all.
Marty?
This is just a point of information. I'm just noticing that the handouts tonight that are dated November 10 do not have the same page number layout as what we at the Planning Commission used our November 10 copy. So if we are stating the page number, we should clarify with Dean in the old page, so we're not going to get all mixed up when we go back to doing our work.
So we're on the same page.
So on the same page.
Mike?
Yeah, Mike Russell. I'd like to propose that Chapter 1, Section 1.9, currently entitled Economic Development,
Yep.
Be retitled Economic Stagnation.
This is on page, you're on
Oh,
page
sorry,
130?
page 1-30.
Okay, yep.
1-30.
Well, it's 131 on ours. Economic development
Well,
strategies.
There's some progress. So, and the reason I'm saying that, not just to be funny, which is my eternal goal, but if you look at the specific points in here, and I won't walk you all through them, there's some glaring omissions in this. There doesn't appear to be any, and I don't mean to criticize the Planning Commission so openly, because I know you guys have worked really hard on this and you've thought really hard about it as well. So when I say it's an omission, I don't mean to say you didn't do your job. But in my opinion, a chapter on economic development ought to have some reflection of what the community has said it would like in terms of economic development. And were you to read this and have no other input, you would conclude that this community wants only to continue to have agriculture, something called traditional industries, and home occupations. At the same time that it points out home occupations, and this is in section under key planning considerations, item 5. Home occupations and agricultural enterprises are a thriving component. Excessive traffic noise, et cetera, can create conflict. So you're acknowledging in here that the emphasis on home occupations and agriculture as the sort of the focus of our economic development lead to conflicts. So that's just an observation. The list of planning considerations, as I said, it fails to provide any sense of what the community as a whole would like to see in terms of economic development, but it points out not the opportunities necessarily, but the problems, which is an important thing to do, of course, in a plan. But again, someone reading this would conclude that there are no opportunities and just problems. And that's a little bit of an overstatement, but that's the way I'm feeling right now. And then under economic development strategies, again, it's a list, if carried to completion, would result in kind of no change. and a preservation of the status quo. And again, if that's the goal of the plan, I'm all for calling a spade a spade. And if the goal of this plan is to maintain the status quo, then let's not call it development, let's call it something else. Let's call it economic stasis, perhaps. And I'm saying all this hoping that this is viewed as a little bit antagonistic because I find this chapter antagonizing.
Can I ask you that, I've talked to you over the years on development, and you've had a lot of ideas and so forth. Does it make sense for you to make a contribution to this section that could come in, that you could, in the quiet of your office, make some recommendations in this section to us?
That's a great idea, Lane. And in fact, a few years ago, we provided a draft of this chapter to the Planning Commission as part of our interaction with the group. And very little of what we proposed or included has made it to this chapter. So what you're saying is if you're going to be a critic, you should come up with some solutions, and that's a perfectly valid observation. If it weren't so late in the process, I'd say I'd try and get more on board with this plan and help with that, but mea culpa.
Calling a spade point. I think as we look at this, there's a lot of feedback. I mean, this is one of the largest groups to look at the plan. I've been to a couple of planning commission meetings. We've been through this. It's one of the largest groups. There's a lot of good feedback right now. My peers on the board would have to agree with me, or we have to vote on it, but I'm thinking we will probably send this back down to the Planning Commission based on the comments we have. Because if we really were going to approve this in March, we have to have another meeting, I think it's in about 2 weeks, to approve it, and then have a third with no changes, and it's got to be warned for March. I know that we're not going to get there. And the other thing is, once the Planning Commission gives this to us, we have 12 months to act. So they gave it to us in October, and I was thinking, well, maybe we could do it for the primaries in November, but if we don't return it, and there's a lot of good reasons to return it, we're going to not meet that first Tuesday, November date. So my sense is it would be productive if, after this conversation here, that the select board votes to return it to make these changes and feedback that people are saying, and then return it to us. It probably increases the probability of having it done in the November election, is where I'm at as we hear this. I don't know how the Planning Commission feels, but there's a lot of substantive things to look at. I think these maps are going to take some time. I have an area of Charlotte today that really isn't current. I mean, our organization's changed a bit in the town, the employees. There's sections in here to list names of people and positions that they've been 3 times changed since their names are in here. So I think there's a lot of proofing that should be done and updating in what the particular section I'm talking about, Charlotte today. So that's, when we get done here, I think the right thing to do is return it to the Planning Commission and work together on this feedback. Yes, Marty. Or Mike, are you done?
Well, actually, if you don't mind, I
Yep.
appreciate the offer. 2 weeks it's a busy 2 weeks for me.
Well, I don't think we're going to have everything done in 2 weeks. That was my point.
All right, so I have 2 objections, not objections, but 2 reactions.
Okay.
That's a short timeline for one person or a group of 5 or
Right.
6 people to get involved. And what I'm really trying to point to here is some level of community engagement on these questions, and it's not that we haven't had that. There's been a significant amount over the years. I think it would be helpful to incorporate more of that feedback that we already have in the can. And I certainly don't want to be the one responsible for sending the Planning Commission back for another year of work, because there's been a tremendous amount of work and a lot of time in this plan. And plans, like constitutions, are best if they are renewed and reviewed regularly. So, I mean, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if this plan went forward with this chapter in here. I'd like to see it improved. But I think it's really the next cycle of the plan where we have an opportunity to get community engagement on this and some other issues. So I'll do whatever you want within the constraints of what I can offer. And if what you're suggesting is that I offer some amendments to the Planning Commission on this chapter in the next couple of weeks, I'll try and do that.
I think Mike speaks to what I think is a bigger challenge for the town is the conflict between urban and rural. I mean, it claims, excuse me, claims to be rural, and everybody likes the farm, rural environment, but then, again, we keep trying to put in urban concepts. And I think this is going to be a big struggle. I mean, there's one in my mind, and as one changes from, face it, it's changing from rural to urban slowly, that it needs to be guided, but to try to, you're going to have to pick a plan somewhere. I mean, to try to stick with rural is not, doesn't work because it's stagnation, as you call it. But I think there's a goal of a lot of people who want to keep it rural. So I think it's a tough juggling act for the planning commission to try to sit that fence. And I think they did a pretty good job. I think we're never going to be able to, no matter how many times we send this back to the planning commission, no matter how many times we have groups of people that show up in favor of a certain subject, there's going to be that issue of one changing to the other. So just kind of another general comment, but it may not be, the specifics may look tough, but I think that it has to be considered down the middle.
Peter needs a chance. He's had his hand up a little bit.
Thank you for those comments, Fritz. I just want to
Pass the microphone.
the issue of development, and in particular in the West Village, has been an issue as long as I've been on the Planning Commission. And I would say, I think I can speak for the Planning Commission in general, that we, especially during this rewrite, we were very conflicted because what we were getting, or what we hear from folks in the West Village when something does come forward, is typically there's no water and there's no wastewater. There's always issues that really are opposing development in the West Village. And I do recall specifically that was some of the comments that we received when we had our first hearing, was that we weren't emphasizing developing the East and West Village enough when we had our first hearing. You know, when we talk amongst ourselves, we think we've been saying this for, again, we all know this, we've been saying this for a long time, develop the West Village, develop the East Village, and here we are 10, 12 years later, and really not much has happened. So we in a way, we felt like, well, maybe we should, as you said, Mike, tell it like it is and reflect that. And that earlier draft really had more of a taste of that originally. So, but at the end of the day, I believe that we felt that, yes, that is what we want to do. We want to develop those village areas for many of the reasons that are itemized in the town plan.
Yeah, who's next? Nancy? What? Nancy, go ahead.
Nancy Wood. I agree with Mike that when, in reading this, it didn't come across and reflect as much as I thought it would of the things that he's been talking about. The group that's been identified in here is the Community Development Group. I believe it's the CD, whatever. Anyway, it's identified in here as a partner, and a number of people were involved over a period of a couple of years, pulling together a lot of ideas about what has been heard from the community. If you recall, several years ago, the Charlotte News did a survey, and a large percentage of the people in it said they'd like to see more services in the village, this village, East Charlotte also. And if you think back to the development of the town, originally the villages were where there were services. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the blacksmith shop in Charlotte. There was, I didn't get here quite in time for the one-room schoolhouse, but the West Village had
I mean, I was just 2 years after that. I mean, you know, you laugh, but I mean, really, there was a school here, there was a library here, and now there's a new library. There was a blacksmith shop, there was a tavern. There were all kinds of things that people who lived outside of the villages came into the villages to enjoy a certain amount of village life. And it's not what I would call urban, Fritz. I mean, urban to me is, I mean, even Burlington is barely urban, but urban is not what anyone here, I think, wants. But what we would like is an active village. And if you go to the senior center pretty much any day of the week, you'll see what people want. There are a lot of people who want a gathering place. They want places nearby where they can go and have a meal. They want to have some kinds of community life. And, you know, I don't know if any of you read the article I did in the Charlotte News a couple of weeks ago, but I've submitted that as my comments on the town plan. But, you know, there are ways that a village can be very friendly and low-key, not adverse at all to the farmland around it, and it's at the same time be a place where people want to live and to come and to have some social life. And those are the things that in this village and in the East Village, particularly this village, though, really do need the water and the waste water services. And I'm glad to see in this plan that it is emphasized that we should move ahead with that. And I really hope that that's being done. The other thing is the village designation process. I thought that application had already gone in, but I guess it has to wait for this plan to be confirmed. So that's another reason to get it done, because that will help us get some state help in terms of, you know, working with historic buildings and all in the village. But I think we need to be thinking about what is the life like in Charlotte? And how do we live it? It's not just, do we want to have open fields and, you know, and agricultural products? That's all good, and you've done a great job, the Planning Commission did, with the agricultural parts of this, I think, especially in terms of the having an opportunity for a variety, diversified agriculture. I think this is really strong on that. But we also do need, and I think could be done in a couple weeks. I mean, you've got the chapter that was proposed before. I mean, that could be presented for you guys to look at, and you know, that could be incorporated. So I think so much of the work in here has been done and is good, and it would be a shame to hold it up, because we need to move ahead with the wastewater. We need to move ahead with the village designation. And I think we can, you know, as long as this is not restrictive of the things that people want, it can be a good start, and there can be amendments over the next, is it, I believe, 7 years now? Is this a 7-year plan? 8 year. But there can be amendments, right, if necessary. So I would urge you to keep moving with it and not slow it down. I think we need to have it on the ballot in March.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak, or?
Sure, go ahead.
So Isaiah Kiley again. Just a very minor thing. I was wondering if it's possible to put more numbering and referencing throughout the plan. Sometimes when you present some paper and you want to reference, that helps a lot. And it seems like there's a lot of long paragraphs without numbering. So that would be one thing that would interest me in some of the bigger paragraph sections. And then the other thing that comes to mind for me in regards to the rural versus the town centers and so forth. I know there's a lot of talk about increasing the East and West Charlotte town centers and guiding development from the rural areas more into those town center areas. My concern is how that's actually happening if we have strong enough wording or strong enough the way it's written and so forth, so that actually happens not by only encouraging people, but actually making statements that, okay, we need this to happen in a certain way. Because my feeling is once you start to develop a town center, for instance, that also encourages more people to come to the area thinking, oh, this is a nice place to live. They have a nice, viable town center. I like that. Let's go and build up in the rural areas. And I'm referring back to, this is actually the original town plan of March 5th, 2013, page 40. I don't know if anyone actually has this, but I'm just going back, using this as where sort of voice coupling with what I'm speaking about on page 40 under the title, Couple Village Area Density with Farmland and Natural Areas. The last sentence states, the 2000 Village Committee thought that smaller lot sizes in the West Village area should not be established without also establishing strong measures to enable preservation of working farms and farmland and to protect natural resources and open land. So my concern is we talk about various things that we want, but then slowly, gradually, something else starts to happen, which is you build up the town centers, and we start building up all the rural areas as well. So one suggestion I would like to make regarding to the present town plan on page 11, section 1.1, visions and goals, second bulletin under goals.
Let's find that. Where's that now? What page?
Page 1-1.
Okay.
1.1 vision and goals, second bullet under goals. It says to reinforce historic, under one of the goals of the plan, to reinforce historic settlement patterns by focusing growth in our hamlets and east and west villages. And just in lieu of what I was just saying, I'm wondering, or making a suggestion or request, that maybe we can add to that combining an objective from it's actually from the original plan again, page 8, section 214. It states, limit development in areas of the town where significant environmental resources or other features with high public value are located. So if we have this, this present goal to reinforce historic settlement patterns by focusing growth in our hamlets and east and west villages, while limiting development in areas of the town where significant environmental resources or other features with high public value are located. Now, I understand that there are many other places in the town where this is referenced in ways, and actually I think a lot of wonderful work has gone into the town plan, and it's an amazing piece of work, so I'm certainly not making any complaints, but I am suggesting, because this is a sort of broad vision and goal segment, to incorporate that there as well.
Did you capture that, Dean, as far as the references, or do you need to have that,
I think so.
that emailed in as a?
Is that,
I can type something up at
Sure.
some point if that works.
I think Clark has hand up next, yes.
I know I've said a lot at this meeting, so hopefully I won't put you to sleep with this one. In so many ways, we have done a beyond outstanding job. I remember being laughed at 30 years ago, saying that my personal goal was to see 10,000 acres conserved in Shalat, and we had 25. We had the scenic overlook. That was it. And some of the conservative people, you know, said I was a communist, and but, you know, we have conserved an immense amount of land that will permanently make this a wonderful place to live. Permanently make this a wonderful place. Thousands of acres. We've got a vibrant young community of young farmers that are coming here. I've got a list of more that want to come here, and I can't wait to do the next project for the next Dave Quickle, or the next Adam Houseman, or the next Dylan Preston, or the next New Mundo Vineyards, or hopefully the hops thing will be successful. We have been tremendously successful in this community in achieving those goals. We do not look like any other town in Chittenden County. Geographically, we are the northernmost town in Addison County, yet without strip development on Route 7 like Ferrisburg or New Haven. The town center. When I sat on this board 20 years ago, my goals were the conservation program. Let's start doing something. let's get a real town center created. And we have our clubhouses. We have a clubhouse community, by the way, if you didn't know that. And what happens is somebody gets a new clubhouse and then somebody else wants a clubhouse. The fire people wanted a bigger clubhouse. Well, the seniors felt left out, so they wanted a clubhouse. And then the library people wanted a clubhouse. And that's where most of our community life takes place, in those buildings, those clubhouses. And what we lack is a few general clubhouses, you know, bars and restaurants where you don't have to be a member of the club. You can just, anybody can go in. So in terms of the struggles, the urbanization pressures, the pressures to strip develop Shalat, and so on and so forth, we have done a magnificent job, and we need to continue to do that. We've created a growth rate that is sustainable. Our tax rate is the same as it was in 1960. It was 17 cents in 1960, 17 cents now. It's the lowest municipal tax rate in Chittenden County by far. Move to Heinsberg and you'll pay triple the municipal tax rate. So I think we've got some fine tuning to do here and there. I think having more livable villages with a few more services is something we need. I'm speaking up for some development, but my life has primarily been in farmland conservation. You know, we're talking about what we need to do to make a very good town into an excellent town. And everybody in this room and a lot of others, Nancy's work over the years, there's so much quality volunteer time that has been put into making this community the place it is, that it's, I just am very proud of what's happened here in the last 30 years. So whether we go back to the Planning Commission, I tried to make my submissions written so that you could just put them in for the next hearing. So I don't really have a strong opinion about that. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about the two things that I wanted to. But this is a magnificent town, and we've got more good things to do.
Thank you. Marty, I think Marty's been up for a while.
Thanks, Clark. To Isaiah, we talked about that subject quite a lot. And we all know the years that we talked about transferable development rights and non-contiguous PRDs and all the tools in the box. We looked at them all and are trying to use them to the extent that we can. But what we recognized in the Planning Commission robust discussions on this one is that, you know, really people want to see more services in the villages, you know, to the point where it's practical and affordable for those business owners that would be coming. So we tried to do both. There's real tension there in terms of getting your little villages to be vital and what we all want, and to not hamper those folks that want to go in, get the lot, do the build out, by having them also do a conservation project out in the sticks. So, you know, we had that discussion, and what we see now in the text is where we came out in a way that we felt was most practical for the next 8 years. It's not to say that we can't, you know, really try to get more conservation done in the rural areas. I don't think we're too much out of balance that way. And the last thing I wanted to say is I really agree with whomever said it is, let's get something going to town meeting day and do a bang-up job on housekeeping notes and maybe a little bit more added in on the village stuff. But there's so much going that's in this plan that needs to get going. Act 174, we want to do an amendment on energy anyway, so we can do amendments. But let's get a draft that can, you know, get us to where we need to go come March of 18.
Can the maps get updated quickly? I thought that was the long pole in the tent.
Yes.
The maps can get updated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that can be done quickly? I mean, like you said, I have a lot of house cleaning. They don't
Yes,
take time.
I do too. I do too.
And I saw you had a lot of yellow stickies. I mean, do you have a lot of house cleaning or more broad-based comments?
One of them is money. There's nothing in our budget for town plan implementation. And then there's times I see when we spend $40,000 to scope half a mile of a trail from point A to point B. $3,000 or $4,000 worth of engineering to tell Junior that he needs to put rocks on the side of the ditch here. When I take those kind of expenditures versus the plans to do things that I see in the town plan, if we're gonna pay for the town plan like we've been paying for some of those small projects, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work that we're signing ourselves up for. So I don't think that it's a good idea to spend that much money, but my thought is maybe the planning commission could put 5 or 10 minutes into, in the next 5 years, we're gonna need a consultant to help us with this. We're gonna need someone to draw that up. And we should put some money in our budget to pay for that. Because a lot of this stuff, especially when you go to that chart of all of the action items we're gonna take, I mean, that stuff's not gonna, some of it's not gonna be free.
Budget column in.
Just take a shot at generating a budget and at least put a placeholder in there to implement it.
Margaret?
Margaret Russell. Trails Committee just has a little bit, few items of feedback. On map 10, which is the Trails Vision map, it shows some easements. I'm not sure why some easements are on here and some are not. So we would like to update that a little bit to include the easements that we're aware of. And then in the,
Chittenden County Regional Planning put together in August?
so they may not have it, but we have, there's a number of other,
Well, that was actually a question to the Planning Commission. Is this something you asked the Regional Planning Commission to draft?
I don't know, because
It's,
Yeah, we're on map 10, right?
yeah, on the bottom right, it's stamped.
We did that, and that was the information we had at the time, and I think going back to Fritz's point about putting a disclaimer on the front, these maps are a snapshot in time, and the information is on an 11 by 17 at best, so there's a lot of information, it's not all there. It's a reference point to go look elsewhere.
So the Planning Commission sent a draft for them to print up?
We gave this information to them, yeah.
Got it, okay.
This could be updated, though.
And should be continuously, I suspect, because it's gonna change from year to year. Things are gonna get added.
To Margaret's point, if a new easement is signed, we'd want to update that.
and is it the Trails Committee's, like,
You can't just update the town plan like that, though, can you?
Well,
I mean, that's
sounds
the
like,
issue with it. That's why we need to be really careful about what that disclaimer paragraph says about, it's a snapshot in time, otherwise you got to amend the town plan, right?
well, Margaret's saying the snapshot as of August 31st is not accurate. There are other easements.
there's a lot of other easements, and not necessarily recent ones that are not on there.
This is the information we got from the Trails Committee, so we'd be happy to update it if we missed something.
Okay.
We
Okay.
may have, I can,
Okay.
if you guys have other info, we've got a couple other little edits we need to do, just some colors that are off, but,
Okay.
yeah, if you could send that, Margaret, that tomorrow, that'd be great.
Oh, go ahead. I mean, we get our easement information mostly from Dean, so I don't know, are we the ones who should be going back in the records? And, I mean, who is responsible for putting the easements on the maps? Is it the Trails Committee?
We communicate with regional planning, and there is a back and forth as far as what they know. I think that this is probably an older map that with some updates, and maybe not all the updates are in there. So I think we can look back.
You're the person?
I guess I am the person. yeah.
Because this is a huge point,
Yep.
is how our methodology for map updates.
For trail easements, for trail easements.
All maps.
No, but I'm saying I'm the point person
In
for
this
trail
case,
easements.
we're talking trails.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're going to provide pen and ink changes, is that, or is it more sophisticated than that?
It's more sophisticated, but we'll provide feedback to regional planning and Charlie so that
Okay.
they can be added.
Or technically, the select board would be doing it in this.
Right, the
this
easements
year.
are documents that the select board has signed off on.
Right.
For example, the Hinsdale, Preston easement, right.
That's not listed in the description, that the Preston land that was conserved. That's just one of the small changes I saw. Oh, you saw that too? There's a bunch of them that are out of date, but we can correct that.
So Dean, we can communicate a little bit.
The trail
Okay.
easements, yes.
Okay. And then the other item, in the town plan, under the transportation section, page 2/61, I had sent the planning commission just updated language because it's pretty outdated. It says that we're planning on the underpass. And I was late getting it to you folks. So I could just send that again so that it's really just updated language.
What page is it, Margaret, please?
It's 2/61, 60 and 61.
So is that,
Under bikes, pedestrian, and others?
Yes, exactly.
So it's 2-60 on the one I've got.
Oh,
What did you say, Margaret? What about
Well,
this
like
bit?
it says, 2 Route 7 underpasses are planned for Charlotte to Lake. So it just updates this because this is 5 years old or however many years old. So there's some language change in there. So obviously, make sure it's okay with you.
is it still basically the same?
It's mostly the same.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
any more comments?
I have another one.
Okay.
As a for example, there's a number of places in here, I don't have them all added up, where it appears to require the town is providing policing services. For example, page 1-15, paragraph 4, that they're going to work with the town to identify alleged violations. That implies that the town is going to be responsible for looking for things that violate. And at this point, we don't do that, to the best of my knowledge. If someone has a zoning issue, they complain. But I'm looking at page 1-15. Chapter 1, paragraph 4, it says, to work with the Vermont Natural Resources and the county, the town will partner with the state to the extent feasible to identify alleged violations. I don't,
Can't see that one either. I don't see it either.
It's number 4. Yeah, the paragraph starts, working around Class 2 wetlands.
So where is it, Dean?
I'm looking at page 1-15.
It's there, but I don't see it. Huh?
You're on
It's in
16.
the lake and shoreline policies section,
And
number
this
4.
is just, I've found this theme in more than one place. This is the first one that my thumb came to, is that I want to be careful that we're not committing the town to hire people to go around and look for this stuff as cops. Or,
Oh, there you go.
yes, well, not police per se, but wetland inspectors, building inspectors. I came from inspector land, and it's crazy. And just the thought that maybe we should try or not commit ourselves to being people that are going out and looking for these.
I just need clarification, Fritz. Do you mean, is your issue paid staff or volunteers or all of the above?
Yes. I
All
mean,
of the above?
all of the above. A paid staff is, you're paying someone to go out and look for trouble, and volunteer staff can easily get swayed towards, well, we don't like what this guy's doing, so we're gonna go, everybody's gonna gang up on him and voluntarily. I mean, I've seen that happen before, so I'm hesitant to approve of, I wouldn't call it a police state, but just committing the town to go out looking for violators of various things.
Any other comments? Yes, Bill?
I just wanted to comment briefly on the energy goals, page 1-50, item number 4. I find a lot of these energy production goals to be a bit on the optimistic side. Most specifically, I'd like to, the part that says we're going to get 45% of our electricity from renewable sources by 2020. That's 2 years away. Are we really going to get almost 50% of our electricity from renewables within 2 years? I mean, is there some sort of plan to put wind turbines on Mount Philo or something? I don't mean to say that jokingly. I find these energy goals to be way optimistic, especially with the fact that we're way behind on Act 174.
Where's that data come from? Energy Action Network?
I can comment on it.
Yeah.
That is a very big topic of discussion. That's a very big topic of a discussion. The energy, all the energy information in here is, they're big numbers. They're very aspirational goals, as the state knows. These are state data and language that we're trying to incorporate as best we can. And we're just starting to put that language in the plan. And we will have to go through an amendment process to get it fully in the plan, because we're not ready to do the full shebang. But they are aspirational, and RPC is going to do our tracking, and it's very complex and very ambitious for sure. But, you know, we need to be in here. This is Act 174. We are required to do this. And just remember that these are aspirational, and that we're all going to work to aspire to these numbers. We're not required. So,
Is it possible that that's a typo and it should say 2030? Just reading the paragraph, it says in the beginning that Charlotte will strive to meet 25% of its energy use from renewable sources by 2025 and 40% by 2035. All the rest in that list are reaching that 40% number in the 2030s, except electricity says 2020.
we'll check the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll check the numbers. Thank you.
Okay, other comments? Yes, Nancy.
Nancy Wood. Another area that I know, I don't think I'm the only person in town who would really like to have a gas station at the corner of Route 7 and Ferry Road again, and some kind of attractive development there. I mean, I know there is a proposal on the books that in many ways sounds like a very attractive proposal. The language in the town plan, however, is very negative about anything happening there. The way it doesn't in any way encourage the development of that commercial district. It doesn't include it in the maps of the village. It basically says it's a dangerous intersection and that we don't want anything on Route 7. Well, I agree with, we do not want to increase our commercial areas on Route 7. I think the town has done a magnificent job preventing that corridor from becoming commercialized, and it's beautiful. However, that corner right there is basically it's right in the village of Charlotte. It is an historic use to have a gas station there. Uncle Sam's was, again, one of the, a public club, if using Clark's words, a place where so many people used to go after school games and everything and all summer long. And there could be something there that is really attractive and useful and a great service to the town. And I'd like to see the town plan address it in a positive way, not just with a few negative comments for that section.
Thank you. Good. Okay, so we've spent about an hour and 15 minutes. We've got feedback. I think all of us are going to get data. Is it to Dean, or is it, who do we get our?
I'd say the next, basically, in the next week, the select board will need to decide whether to warn a second hearing, which would be on January 22nd. And that would probably be the last hearing in order to get on the town meeting warning.
But don't we have to have a hearing that has no change? I mean,
That
all
would be
these
the
changes-
change. Any change, that hearing would include everything, all the comments that have
But
been
we can
made.
take that much time? I thought we had to have it.
Up to January 3rd is.
January 3rd.
Would be the start of no more changes. 15 days prior to the 22nd.
Is that when we should have January 3rd is the next
That's
time for a
19 days.
hearing then?
No, that's warning, sorry, that's warning the hearing. So the hearing would be on January 22nd. It would be warned on January 3rd, and after January 3rd, there'd be no more changes.
So it'd be a warning for the final hearing.
Right.
So we're going to make all these inputs, and they won't be seen publicly again until January 22nd.
Correct. The warning, they should be available when the warning comes out on January 3rd.
On January 3rd? Yeah. Oh, so
To digest.
to digest, but we don't make any changes on the 22nd?
No, well, if it's to stay on.
Minor editorial
track,
correction.
right.
Okay, well, that gives us more time than I thought we had. I thought we had to have it done in
That
2
shrinks
weeks.
down our time.
Huh?
To me, that doesn't seem like enough time.
Doesn't.
So what's the consensus of the board then? Or what's the planning commission think about what we've heard?
You're saying we would have to take what we heard tonight and then get it back to the select board no later than January 3rd. Is that correct?
Right, and they'll have to decide by December 18th whether to warn a hearing on the January 22nd. But all changes will need to be made by January 3rd.
So which is really quick when it's been 10 years in the planning, in the making of this.
Yes.
I'd like to see if we can make that happen.
Will there be a vote on the town budget in April?
On the town budget in April? Well, that becomes, that's, in accordance with our charter, that becomes the endorsing vote. There will be to your point, there will be a town meeting in April, something like the first Tuesday in April.
A budget vote.
A budget vote, yes.
Australian ballot.
Australia ballot.
Okay, voting on the budget, when in April?
To be determined.
Probably the first Tuesday, 30 days after the town meeting, or in that range.
I would appreciate you fellas considering, if we fail for town meeting, shooting for that date.
That's a good point.
That's a good idea. Very good.
Okay, is board members here, are you comfortable with trying to get this together in the next couple of weeks?
I like the April timeframe.
Because I've got some more,
Huh?
I've got some more comments.
Yeah.
Now or at another?
Well, we're way past, so maybe I can just meet with somebody on coming to the next planning commission meeting or something. I don't know.
When's your next planning commission meeting?
21st.
21st? So you'll have some more inputs for them at that time then?
I'll write them and put them in
Okay.
quick summary form. If I have to write them, that'll eliminate half of them anyway.
So everybody's good, we're gonna move forward. Okay. Thanks for the inputs. He was typing while we were doing it.
I think it's a lot of work to do.
I mean, I found a lot of stuff, but I guess everybody wants to do it.
Wow. I did too.
Get it up to third, and announcing a final hearing.
I know, I found, but those are quick changes, I found them.
There's no changes.
And then a summary.
I'm gonna annotate.
If you don't like what was put in.
We're right on time for our 8:20 item. Senior Center Director. Beth, what is the status of where we're at here? You want me to, well, let's, want me to speak or do you want to speak? You want to speak or you want me to speak? Okay. So there's been an interviewing process for a director of the senior center. And through the interviewing, there's been the senior center board members. I attended the meetings, and you've come up with a candidate that you're recommending. So and you're going to talk to this candidate tomorrow. So the issue is whether she works 30 or 35 hours is for the senior center to work out. So that's not an issue. Another topic, and I think we need Dean's presence, is health insurance. So she's on Medicare, and so there's Medicare payments, and then there's Medicare, what do you call it, supplement, like an umbrella. So this is new to our board. We haven't dealt with anybody that I know of, with health insurance that is on Medicare. So it's not our policy. We have these plans that we've been through. And I need Dean to help me with the cost, but it's essentially less than an employee that we pay now. So I think Dean will talk a little bit about the health insurance piece for the candidate for the senior center director, Medicare. So you pay a Medicare that comes out of Social Security on a monthly basis, and then there's the supplemental after that. There's two pieces to health care.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not familiar with the specifics of the Medicare and Medicare supplement, but currently the town provides a benefit, a very nice benefit for employees that are not receiving Medicare. For full-time employees, it's 90% of the silver high deductible plan, which is a high deductible plan, so the premium is fairly low. It's not the lowest. It's one step above the lowest. If there may be a range of Medicare supplement plans out there. I think it's likely if the town were to provide that benefit, it would still be lower than what the town would pay for a benefit for someone who's not on Medicare. So if you're, if that position was filled by someone who is not on Medicare, potentially you'd be paying health insurance unless they didn't take that benefit. If it's someone who is on Medicare, the town doesn't pay anything for the Medicare, but if they're on a Medicare supplement, or if they want a Medicare supplement as a benefit, that would be a possibility that the town, it would be an additional benefit the select board would need to approve.
But probably not an additional cost as compared to another employee.
Probably not. Seemingly, because the cost of the Medicare supplement, from what we know, from what we've heard, is quite a bit lower.
So you would probably want to investigate what this person has already, right? To see if that's the most.
I'd want to investigate what the range of options are for Medicare supplements.
Do you know much about it, Marion?
But when you open that, if you're talking about, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, is paying for that person's, paying that person's Medicare and Medicare supplement. Just a supplement. So then there's other people in other employees that have chosen not to take the health insurance because their husband or their wife or whatever has health insurance and then they don't need that. So where's their benefit?
That's always the case.
That's a big can, I agree.
So you have a policy now, it says, this is the health insurance, this is what we offer. Do you want it, do you not want it? That's what you have. And now, or are you gonna go down that other path that says, well, maybe we should pick up the Medicare supplement, maybe we should pick up this. Maybe we should pay this person this amount of money because they're not taking the health insurance, and so we don't have to pay for that. So you have to pick the point at where you're going to draw the line. This is our policy, and this is what we do.
I've seen some places that have a policy that have a percentage of the potential insurance. They'll say, well, if you want the cash equivalent is like, and it's usually pretty low, like 30 or 40% of what we would pay.
CDU is $1,500 opt-out for the district.
Yeah.
The bus drivers, it's only 750.
Which
What's the bus drivers?
750.
Which would be, I think you would have to do, it'd be hard to do it for one specific person. You'd have to come up with that policy to do it for everybody, because just like Mary says, there's going to be other people online saying, why, well, if they're doing it, why can't I do it for my insurance? You know, if you combine two spouses, one's got pretty good insurance and the other one gets a cash back, then all of a sudden you've got it all covered. So if that's something we want to visit, but I think it's not a person-specific or Medicare-specific, but has to be a more general.
Is this person, candidate, uninterested or unable to use the town's healthcare without disrupting the Medicare coverage? Is that the issue? Like, why wouldn't they have both coverages?
I think when you turn a certain
on.
age.
Is it on?
It's just for VCAM,
Oh,
so it
okay.
picks it up online.
I think it's a different kind of thing. I mean, it's a separate policy.
Is Medicare optional or required at age 65?
If you don't,
If you're currently employed and you turn 65,
Yeah.
because I'm going to be on Medicare myself soon, but if you, like my wife has medical insurance through her employer, so I can either elect to stay on her insurance till I'm 70, and when you turn 70, you have to go on Medicare, or you can elect, like, I'm going to be 65, I could stay on my wife's policy if I want, or I can elect to get Medicare Part A and B.
So if the person's employed, I've heard you just say that they don't have to be on Medicare. I don't know if this person is on Medicare yet or is anticipating the future. So maybe we offer, whatever our situation is, single or family, whatever that is, maybe we offer the program, to keep it simple, that the town offers to employees. Susan?
Why would you want to do that? I mean, that would cost the town money, whereas if this person is on Medicare, then what she's paid in and what the government pays would cover her Medicare.
Well-
And there would be a lower amount. See, I don't see it as having as broad implications as you do. It's just that if you're older, then you have a different source of income, and the only piece that the town would have to cover would be the supplemental, which would be much less.
Well, I agree with that, but Mary and Fritz are suggesting if we go out of the bounds of our current system, there are going to be other members of our other employees.
But I think some of those issues, I mean, there are always issues, but I think the issues that Mary and Fritz are raising are different from just covering whatever is the health insurance for the age group that you're dealing with. And for seniors, this is what you cover.
Which, with our demographics, may be more and more common.
There's pretty strict laws as to when you offer something to one employee, you have to offer it to everybody. And I don't know enough about the Vermont rules to say exactly what that is, but I would certainly think that should be investigated by somebody who does, because you can get in big trouble if you pick certain employees and offer them something, or what appears to be something that other people aren't offered.
But you could just, so anyone else who's over 65 and who has Medicare would also be eligible for getting this supplement. But I understand that there is no such person.
In lieu of the town-sponsored health plan.
Yeah.
that would have to be a policy change before employment or after employment, and then it would be picked up.
Christina?
Well, I was just gonna make that point, that right now, the policy that stands in place is that here's the town insurance. Do you want it or do you not? There's nothing else in place. So no matter what your decision is, the personnel policy will have to change if you change that decision right there.
To your point, we can be strict. It deals with senior employee.
But it would have to change before you offer the
age word.
Huh?
You can't say the age word.
But if you don't cover, you're using.
Well, the
age
Medicare
discrimination.
situation, I'm not,
Yeah, I don't know enough, but I
Well,
know
it's
that
not
I've,
using age discrimination when you're offering the person the same as everybody else.
yeah.
There's a five-year window.
Other people
Oh,
because
yeah.
of their age.
I realize that, but we go to policy and we have to look at the policy the way it sits at this time.
Just to be clear, there's a 5-year window. If you're 65, from when you turn 65 until you turn 70, if I'm working or if I have a spouse that's working and they have medical insurance, I can either take that insurance or I can go on Medicare between being 65 and 70.
But that's
And when
assuming,
you turn 70, there are no options. You have to go on Medicare.
and that's assuming you're married or partnered.
Well, yeah, it assumes that either A,
Yeah.
you're currently working or
Right.
you have access to some other.
But once you're on Medicare, I think you're on it. I don't think you can go
I don't think
on
you
and off.
bounce around once you're.
Dean, do you think there's somebody at VLCT that's a insurance guru that can help navigate this for us?
There probably is.
I'd like to look into it more. I mean, it clearly saves the town a ton of money, but I'd also like to look at it more globally and just see what the exposure is for every town employee. Let's see what that would be if there was something like what the district has. That says, yeah, there's a minimum
I mean, that could
commitment
save
the
us
town
money
will
too.
pay.
I mean, instead of somebody, it might.
And it might match whatever the Medicare Part B cost is. If it's $600 a year that the town's picking up, then that would be, if people want to opt out, what the town offers for any age. And that could be a fair way of doing it too. It'd be a nominal amount of money.
so do we want to approve this candidate with the pay that's been calculated and leave the insurance as an issue for our next meeting?
I think you'd end up having to change the policy, won't you? If
Right.
you
Well, it's separate
can't
from,
do all of that within the next few weeks.
It is separate. I don't know that we have much choice.
but I think we should we ought to confirm the candidate, right?
Yeah. Beth, do you have a sense of covering Part B as a deal breaker for taking the position?
I'm not positive, but it's been in conversation. I mean, it's not, we haven't finished the conversation.
I don't see it being a bad thing. I just think we need to make sure that we're staying in the lanes. And if we need to do it for everybody, then if it, in the long run, it could save with other employees too. So it's
Right.
not a bad thing to offer in lieu of payments. It's just an administrative issue and a policy issue.
When was the person starting? They were starting until January, right? So, you have time.
But I think we ought to show that we support your candidate with the insurance to be determined at a later date. I mean, we have the ability to say what the hourly pay rate will be now. So you can, when you meet with this person tomorrow, we have approved the position, the pay, and your recommendation to us with health insurance to be determined at a later date.
And I even go so far as to say that the board has interest in looking into covering the supplemental versus paying the full insurance costs.
Yeah, I think.
I do.
You
I
have to
just-
remember, there's Part D also.
Well, that's why there's interest. We do have to look into it.
Well, we're talking about supplemental. I don't know whether it's B or D.
Yeah.
It's the supplemental piece.
Do you have, I don't know if I have do you have the pay rate that was established or?
$18.99?
Yeah.
Is it in our packet?
Yeah.
It's in the
Page 1 is the offer.
Okay, 1899. So does somebody want to make a motion? Maybe Matt, as you want to clarify I would also say in the motion, hours 30 to 35, dependent upon the discussion.
Christina
Can I
has
have input on that 30 to 35?
Yep.
We base holiday hours and all of that, the vacation hours, what you accumulate. That's all based on whether you're 30 hours a week or 35.
Well,
So I need when you approve this person as far as actually employing them, there needs to be a set hour.
Okay.
Because that's how sick time and vacation time are
Understand.
accumulated.
So you're
What
going
was the previous director paid? The previous director, what was her pay
to,
rate?
30 hours, I believe.
It was
No, it was.
a
it was
different job.
It was a different job, and it was 28 hours.
Oh,
I
it
don't
was-
know what the hourly rate was.
Well, the letter,
Oh, yeah.
the conditional offer of employment
Oh, here it is.
is for 35.
35 hours, yes.
I just have on the top of page 2, the name change there on that.
Okay. On the heading?
Yeah. On the heading. So I'll make a motion to approve the conditional offer of employment as Senior Center Director to Carolyn Kulik. Kulik? Kulik. For an approved hours of 35 hours per week at a wage of $18.99 per hour, to be signed on behalf of the Select Board by the Select Board Chair, and to include a sentence noting that the Select Board will be has interest in looking into covering the cost of supplemental Medicare insurance in lieu of the healthcare plan from Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay. Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay.
Can you say that
So
over
we'll
backwards?
change the letter.
Right.
You talk about what the standard healthcare is.
Rewind.
However, in the letter, we're going to further investigate,
Okay.
as Matt defined.
Authorize the chair to sign.
Did we do the Palmer study? We didn't have to
that's
do
what
the
this
Palmer
is.
study?
We did.
We did
We
that.
did it already.
We did.
Okay, on this particular,
Yep. Director of Senior Center, we did.
I mean, I remember doing that, but I thought it, I don't know.
Supplemental Medicare
No, we were doing it for this particular person.
No, we don't do it for the
Blue
person. We
Cross
do it-
Blue Shield.
We do it for the
position.
For their
job.
experience.
Policy.
That's right here.
No, I know. I get that. What I'm saying is, wouldn't we weigh that any person's experience against the Palmer?
That's this adding up. of
This is the
previous
level
experience.
5 that got us to the box.
We took her experience?
Right here.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess maybe I wasn't here for that.
Is
Did we
it?
take this
I think
particular
this
person?
No,
is
the
something-
job description.
And this is something that Dean
The job,
calculated.
yeah, they're talking about two different things.
Okay.
The pay grade was established by the job description, and then this step was established by by her experience.
Dean took the policy and
Yeah.
and the resume and made this rubric of what percent for what experience, added it all up, and it got to step 5.
Okay, and I'm just asking because this is still all new to the town, to understand how we're getting to certain pay rates and whatnot.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, good.
And, yeah, it was,
So Dean, you'll get back to us and what she has, what the supplemental is, and we'll need to look at that as far as maybe so Dean can prepare some options that we will look at. Okay. Zoning administrator. Find my notes. You want to, Peter, I have notes about, you've put together or you have a recommend, I have to get my terminology correct.
I had emailed it to Dean.
Okay.
You
So,
have copies of that email, Dean, by any chance? I didn't bring one with me.
I do have one. Does anyone want additional ones? I can make more than one. I mean,
so here it is.
I got,
You want one?
No, I don't remember what it said.
You remember what it said?
Okay, so it's the planning commission's responsibility to nominate, and then it's the select board's responsibility to appoint. So you're going to nominate a candidate for us. Do you want, maybe reading your email of, and then tell us who you're recommending? Is that-
I think there's an issue that it wasn't really discussed by a quorum of the planning committee because they weren't present at interviews. I don't know how.
You're pretty much the only people left here, so
And
he's making it
I don't
easier.
think since the interviews are an executive session that the planning commission was allowed to tell the rest of the committee everything that happened at the interviews.
So,
So if we're going to stick by the strict statute, we
Yep.
need to scrap it. The planning committee needs to interview people and give us a recommendation.
I missed the first part.
I don't think that everything that was said during interviews was privy to a quorum of the planning commission.
No, it wasn't, and that was intentional, because when we discussed it that night, whenever that was, Thursday night, because we had already gone down this path, Select Board had started the interview process, and then we collectively learned what the process is, that what I said is that we had a planning meeting Thursday night, and I was going to ask them if they were okay with Marty and I representing them this time. I specifically didn't get into issues or discussing names or qualifications because A, those interviews were under executive session, and B, it really wasn't relevant. The ask to the planning commission was because Marty and I were already down this path with the select board, were they okay with us making that judgment call and making a recommendation? So that's how we got to where we are.
So the rest of the planning commission agreed with you
They agreed
being
that,
their representative, even though they had no clue of what they were voting on, really.
correct.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
which is not
Because
abnormal,
it
is
wouldn't be, if I got into a discussion about their, what we talked about or the people, then if I was them, I'd say, I want to interview them, right? Because we're just giving them secondhand information at that point.
Well, I think there's one piece of information they should have known.
Pardon?
I said, I think there was a couple of basic things that happened during the executive session that would have made a difference as to whether or not they decided to defer to the two of you.
It's hard to hear you,
I
Fritz.
don't know, it's hard to hear you.
Can't hear you.
I think there's a couple of things that were said in executive session that may have changed their mind had they known what it was when they deferred to you to.
Then I think to be fair to them, I think it wouldn't be, the only way to be fair is to include them in the process.
I think that's what Fritz started with, what
So,
you had missed
and then,
was,
and then what I'm saying is that in my mind, including them in the process isn't giving them recollections of what transpired in interviews.
That's what Fritz was saying, that the planning commission should really conduct the interviews to
Oh,
then nominate.
I didn't get that
That
from
was-
what he was saying.
Right at the beginning.
I mean, I'm totally fine. I mean, I want everything to be above board and do it, but when we left that night, Wednesday night, I think it was, we kind of collectively said, we're already down this path halfway. We've already gone through 2 rounds of interviews.
But Fritz, let me ask you, when we interview candidates for jobs, we don't necessarily have a quorum of the board. The board, in the case of the select board, maybe 2 people will interview a candidate and then bring that candidate back to the board. So it's,
But the board has the option to do that up front.
Well, and it's not in state statute.
Yeah.
When we hire, it's not statutorily.
And there's always the option of, we're going to interview this person, would you like to show up? And I sometimes defer to the opinion of the rest of the board, or sometimes I participate. But that's a
okay.
before it happens event, not, oh, we didn't do that, take my word for it event.
Well, the one reservation I had, and I was one of the 5 board members that did not attend the interview process. And I think 4 is plenty, and I could not make it to those interviews. But when we selected who to interview, 4 of us were there and Fritz was not. And one of the candidates we had shown interest in interviewing, who ended up not being interviewed because of logistics. And that was a decision that I thought was a failing of the process, of casting a wide net in the interview process. 4 of us had said, yeah, we were interested in interviewing this person. Person had a job offer and withdrew, then came back and said, I am still interested, but we did not have time to have an open meeting to include that candidate in the process. And so it was narrowed down against what I think was the board's consent
Well,
to
there was
interviewing the 3rd person.
a decision in there at the snapshot in time, as Charlie Pugh said, that there was a quorum of the board members that knew, that at that point didn't know she was interested, that there was only the remaining, and the decision was made to interview just those 2 remaining by a quorum of the board.
Or, as I saw it, as a non-action, because
Well,
you would need to have warned a meeting to make a decision, and
It
an
was
email.
warned, and then it was an executive session, and I guess technically we should have come out of the executive session
Because
and
no
made the comment
decisions-
that the decision was made to interview these 2 people.
Right, because no decisions are allowed to be made in executive session. Legally.
Okay, so what's your recommendation then?
Start over.
Have the planning commission start over?
Well, I'm not sure the mutated path we're on is going to end up very pretty. I don't know. I have suspicions.
What options do you see?
Keep going on the mutated path and see what happens, or start over.
Will they have a recommendation as,
Okay, we can go do it that way. It's fine.
I prefer the start over
I'm
method.
Again, I want to make sure that we're doing this right. I'm fine with starting over, if that's the pleasure of the select board. If we do, then we definitely need to change the makeup of the folks that are doing the interview. There should be a quorum from the planning commission, so there should be 4 people from the planning commission, because the planning commission is making the recommendation. And maybe it's 1 or 2 people from the select board and/or zoning. That would be my suggestion.
That sounds,
Pardon?
that sounds like a good suggestion, process-wise.
Sorry, Marty. It's okay. Christina, with that process, I'm wondering if the select board is ultimately going to be happy with, in these interviews, 5 of you wanted to attend, 4 of you actually attended. So in an interview that includes 2 select board members, are you going to be happy with that? Or do you want an interview process that includes all planning commissioners and all select board members?
I like the option.
Was not a select board member, what did Charlie Russell call it?
Ad
ad hoc or a non-voting, automatically a non-voting member of the planning commission?
I'm on too many committees.
I don't-
Dean, the way I read,
44, 48?
yeah, VSA 24, Chapter 117, subsection 009, 4448, Section B, the planning commission may nominate and the legislative body may appoint.
That's an acting.
That's an alternate.
That's the acting.
That's acting,
You gotta
if
go
there is
to
no
A
one.
above,
Um,
administrative officer.
And, yeah, it reads the same, shall be nominated by the planning commission and appointed by the legislative body. Well, that disconnect between nominate and appoint means either the select board would have a confirming or rejecting interview process, or it would be a combined process.
Right.
Senate confirmation hearing, there you go. Same concept.
Well, I have a question about the process, so, because it's not really, I mean, it states that it would be appointed by the legislative body, but it is a recommendation, so does that mean you guys sitting up there have to take the recommendation?
Well, it's a nomination, which is a little different than recommendation.
So then the second thing is that if you guys expected the planning commission to have just a couple of members represented, then you guys could always make a vote that 2 or 3 of your members are the ones who attend the planning commission interviews. And you guys trust the 2 or 3 members that you appoint to attend. It just seems like there's 2 boards and you're gonna be fighting with schedules to try to schedule the interviews, the board members, and trying to get everybody on board. So I'm concerned that the process is gonna take a long time.
The process, we started this process with the select board was interviewing and had input from zoning and planning. And then in the middle of this select board is interviewing process, we realized there's a statute that says you have to do it this way. And it's like, oh, we already started it this way. So you're in this, what I just referred to as a mutant process. And I guess we can just wing it. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you, so let's say that we start over, and let's say the planning commission authorizes 2 members to represent the full board, the planning commission board. And then they come forward to the select board with their nomination.
I'd say that again.
Well, it's what just
kinda like
happened.
starting
It's what just happened.
Well, with the exception that the,
Right, I was gonna say, as a point of interest, you guys are the minority. It's the planning commission that
Exactly.
needs to have the big
But-
group of people.
But they can have as
You guys-
many as, the planning commission can have as many people as they want.
What I'm trying to say is that they should-
Why?
They need to have a quorum.
Can't the planning commission among themselves say, can't the planning commission among themselves say, I want 2 people to carry out, I've got other things to do, I gotta do the town plan, I gotta go do this and that, I'm out of town. Can't the planning commission authorize 2?
If they voted on that in an
Okay.
open meeting, I would think
Okay.
so.
Can we vote on 2 people to pass stuff? It has to be a quorum that votes, right?
It's the quorum votes, Christine.
This is not a vote, this is a nomination,
It's a decision.
it's a nomination to the select board.
Decision at the
This
Yes,
is one of
Mark.
those weird statutes.
Weird, especially since it's a 3-year
It's-
position by statute.
Curious to me why we're at almost home plate or at third base, where we collectively, as a group, decided we were okay with this hybrid approach.
You made a mistake.
I want to finish what I'm thinking. Thank you. And now, for reasons that I'm guessing, I'm reading between the lines here, there's energy on the select board that wants to start over again because of reasons I won't go into. And I'm just kind of wondering about what's our real motivation here? Are we going to say, yes, oh gosh, we are really silly to not know the statute. Let's just go by the statute. We're going to let the history be history. We're going to be fresh and starting over. And I'm listening to everybody talk about
if you're gonna do
doing the
that-
statute and all of a sudden wanting a hybrid of the statute. let's just ask the select board to join the nominating committee, which is the planning committee. I mean, the statute's intent was to have the planning commission nominate, and this balance of power thing where the select board, so it's this democratic approach. And I'm just kind of a little bit mixed up about
Right, but if
what people's intentions are here.
If we stuck with our original plan,
Yeah,
with our hiring committee, it wouldn't have gone to the planning commission to nominate anyways.
right.
Because our original
You
plan
did with Joe.
would have been,
Right.
right, would have been like it was when Joe was hired. It would have been just a committee, and we would have came out, and we would have voted on
Yep.
whoever.
Yep.
Joe was a mistake, although he worked out great.
And Janine.
He's really good.
And Charlie, and Spencer.
I don't know how far back that
But
statute
now,
went.
we have a statute. Don't we have an obligation to follow the statute?
I would think definitely,
Me too.
even if it's a first. We should,
Right.
we should do it.
So.
It's the first time we followed this statute.
So, okay, so I go back to my point, we're gonna follow the statute. So, the planning commission,
We're going to start over.
yep,
Planning commission, we'll get together and we'll decide how many people
Yep.
we want to do interviews. And
Could
it
be
could
one
be 2
person, it could be
people.
5 people,
It could 1,
whatever.
it could be 5, it could be
Yep.
7.
that's what I said.
And then we'll do the interviews.
So I guess just to be clear to the applicants, is it going to be a two-step process? The planning commission will interview and then the select board will interview? Or are representatives of the select board going to sit in on the,
I would think we owe the applicants that the planning commission decides to interview, if any are repeats of the previous process that was botched, a short letter of explanation with the Vermont state statute and explaining
Where we screwed
why
up.
we're re-interviewing, yeah.
but even non-repeats, I think we
We
need to
would
tell
also
them
give
what's the
this-
process.
We'd give the same letter. Thank you, this is the first time the Charlotte Select Board is adhering to the statute in this manner, and this will be the process.
But the planning commission may choose not to interview again.
Yes, that's what I mean. Anyone they do choose to interview should receive a letter that is explaining this
Okay.
process.
So they've interviewed a couple of candidates a couple of times.
Yep, or maybe not, who knows,
They-
who they
okay.
choose to interview.
So we turn it over to the planning commission to come to a nomination at our next meeting, if you can. I guess that's what we're saying,
Are you either,
Our next meeting is the 21st.
2 weeks or.
Our select
Maybe,
board's next meeting-
I'll see if we can hold a meeting next week. Because the 21st is full, we want to work on the town plan.
It should be a very quick presentation of the candidate from us, and almost, to me, it's a pro forma appointment from your recommendation based on the statute. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes.
If that's the pleasure of the commission.
Unless there's
yeah,
other
it depends
commissioners
on
that
how
want
the
to
rest of the
actually hear the
Well,
interview.
that's true, but they're gonna work that problem.
Yeah,
They may in fact not have to interview anybody,
that's correct.
because I think they've already done what you're asking them to do. They've already been authorized by the planning commission to represent them to interview candidates, and they've done that.
That's correct.
So frankly, you're
already
gonna,
nominated
so
somebody,
frankly-
so we could keep going.
frankly, you're gonna come back in 2 weeks, just like you are here, and have to do another thing.
Well, if they're going to do that.
Possibly.
Huh?
Except it'll be clean to the
Okay,
statute.
that's fine.
And maybe they'll do more interviews. It's
So it's up
So
to
planning
you.
commissions.
Can I just ask,
Wait, yeah, this is.
I'm
There's
just
What?
worried that the select board's not gonna have the input if they don't go to all the interviews.
Well, the
we
select
don't-
board can elect to interview the nomination, the nominated person.
Right, but now I've got a choice of one.
Yeah, that's a weird statute. But that's the statute.
But they may not even interview anybody. That's the whole point
That's not the
here.
planning commission's issue.
They've
I
already
know.
nominated somebody, why
Right.
don't we vote on it now?
Statute is poorly written.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a
That I
great
think we all
process,
agree
but
on.
it was pretty clear.
Can we do this next year?
I just have a quick question about.
Yeah, Lee's
how the
doing a
meeting
good
process
job.
is
Can't we
gonna
just do it
work. So
next-
the planning commission is gonna go back, they're gonna have a meeting.
Yep.
Are they gonna meet in executive session and present all the people they've interviewed with you guys, or?
You're missing my point. They've already been delegated by the planning commission to represent the planning commission.
Actually take a vote amongst the planning commission to vote for whoever.
Whatever they want to do. Whatever they want to do.
Doing additional interviews.
We're going to discuss it in executive session and make a decision.
Okay, and then come out and say, well, you can't make a decision in executive session.
Could be we want to interview, it could be that we're okay with the
So
decision
you guys
now.
might actually start all over and put it out in the paper.
We could.
But the planning commission did in fact already discuss it and authorized Peter and Marty to represent them in the application process.
They may come back and just said, we're still good with it.
Thank you.
I hear you, I hear you, but let's,
I just have a hard time voting for any nominee that's suggested without, from paper,
pardon?
from
But
paper.
You just approved the senior center director. You've never
Yeah,
met that
We
person,
didn't interview them.
right?
On Frank's the liaison, he has
He didn't interview
more
him?
knowledge
Huh?
on that position as being the liaison that would have more input on my behalf as to like the senior center. I don't know what
I don't-
goes on over there, and I would expect
I-
that Beth would be very good at it because she works over there.
I think Lane hit the nail on the head. I mean, you were okay with the senior center.
Yeah, but I don't
so-
know that position.
You
I
have
know.
interviewed the applicants.
Yes,
So-
we've interviewed the applicant and we've set the pay rate and we've sent out the offer. With the zoning administrator, I know the position. And I know what
But you're
I
saying
know
it's
what the
not-
zoning administrator should be able to do. And if I can't see how that person, how the group of people, if there is a group, how each one of them answer a question and act.
I hear what you're saying, but that's just because of your background.
It's not your position.
It's not your position, it's just because of your,
Well, it's
you
my
happen to
position
be,
on the select
you
board
happen to
make
be
sure
on
that
the
we get
zoning
best
administration
That we get the
board.
best zoning administrator we can get.
Well,
Out of the applicant,
we all want
out of the
that.
applicants
We all
that are
want that.
provided.
But
We
is
all
that,
want
is
that.
is that an applicant issue or a process issue? I mean,
Process.
You're, I guess I'm not hearing that. What I'm hearing is you're responding to the applicant, but not to the planning commission's nomination. You're voting on I guess I'm not clear.
Well, because I'm taking, not that I have anything against the planning commission, but I can tell more by seeing a person being asked the questions than getting information from anybody else, no matter who they are.
So they nominate somebody, and you look at them, and you decide they haven't answered your questions satisfactorily, and you say no.
Then it's back to the planning commission to nominate.
I'll say no to every nominee
another
that comes in, it seems like. Because I'm not gonna know. I'm not gonna know who to compare them to,
But the
because I don't have other applicants.
Well, then I don't see how you could say that and then still not even interview the senior
The
center
statute
position.
delegates,
You,
We
The process.
interviewed the senior center.
huh?
We interviewed her. She was, as far as I know, she was the only applicant.
no, they had 7 or 8, what are we talking about?
The senior center?
They had 10, they interviewed, I have a whole
But that
matrix,
has to do
7
with-
people.
Right, but that has to do with the senior center board that has to,
But what's the difference? Senior center board made a recommendation to us, we trust the senior center board, and we voted for this person. You've never met her before in your
but
life.
I don't know,
This
I
is
don't
in
know what the
statute.
position entails.
So what? This is in statute that they nominate for us to approve.
So why aren't we taking the nomination that they've given us tonight
That's a good question.
and voting on it?
Right.
We should. That's
Then
exactly
we-
why we're here.
Then we get rid of
That's why,
2 weeks from now.
well, that's exactly right, because I don't think.
I don't think so, because
One
decisions
question.
were made in executive session. Decisions were made in executive session. I think if we act on the process that's behind us, that we are endorsing being out of step with statute. I don't think that's a good decision.
Yes, Christine.
So what happens if we
I
take that vote
concur.
right now, and 3 of you vote no and 2 of you vote yes? What do you do then?
Then the planning commission will have to go re-advertise.
Okay.
Has to be unanimous?
Hmm?
Has to be unanimous?
Oh, I thought she said, we voted it down. I think that's what she meant to
You
say.
take the nominee the planning commission
Yep.
gives you, and you guys take a vote right now whether or not to hire this person as the zoning administrator,
Yeah.
and 3 of you say no and 2
Right.
of you say yes, then we are now, 3 of you do not want to hire the person,
Right.
so it goes back to going out to
Right.
the paper again.
Posted,
and-
posted in the paper.
So maybe we should know that now,
I think
instead of 2 weeks from now.
So I'm going to try to schedule a meeting next week and do it.
Okay, so you're going to carry out the responsibilities of the statute. Everybody's good with that?
I said I agree with Robert.
So we'll either have a nomination by the 21st, either way.
Okay.
You should all approve it.
Okay?
Who's going to be on the? I don't know what I was thinking. Who's going to be on that committee, or whatever
It's the
it's
planning
called?
commission.
It's the planning commission.
Move on. You guys go down a circle.
Okay.
We are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Start over.
So I don't know the protocol here, but I've been sitting for 2.5 hours. And 12 appears. And I was looking at the meeting packet, I wasn't looking at the agenda. And so I saw comment from Robin Pierce and comment from Kara Spear. So I thought we would be coming up, but then you jumped to Title 24, Section 4448. So have I missed my chance to speak? Or can I still speak?
Well, let me say, I saw your note. I think it's a good comment, and we're going to, what the meeting you missed, I have your note right here. I was going to go to and make that as a change to make, what you call it, a view path on the Green Porch Road. Yes.
My problem is, I got the planning and zoning guidance instruction, go figure. But they're the first and third Thursdays of the month, so I can never make the planning commission meeting here.
Okay.
Tonight, I had a meeting in Essex for a grant we got, and I left early to come here. So it seems every time you meet, or the planning commission meet, I have a meeting somewhere else, and I can't get away. But I tried to get this change done when Janine was here.
Okay.
Couldn't get anywhere. There was talk of putting the photograph of the front page, or the front cover of the town report. Never got any further than that. You've read what I said, but it seems to me that you could walk it, I could drive you. You go from the old brick store north, lovely views in between the houses, but it's not consistent. That section after the underpass, which isn't a scenic road, everybody from the public right-of-way can see it. So the Champagne Bikeway, people stop all the time to take photographs. I don't know why it wasn't included. Darren, when I was talking to him, said he thought the scenic roadway should go right to the border with Shelburne. But I just haven't been able to get here. And I came tonight, and I've said my piece. So.
We've got your note, and we're going to do an update. We have a whole bunch of issues, and I have a bunch I'm going to turn over. He's going to put them all together, and that was one of them. I have your letter here. We read it. We talked about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You don't want to be in our planning commission? You can do it.
I was for 7 years.
Oh, okay.
And then I got the job I have now, and conflicting nights, so I couldn't.
Okay. So we're on the 8th.
Thompson's Point Design Review Committee.
Okay. Thank you. We're on the 8:30 item. Approve the certificate of adoption, the county and town all hazard mitigation plans. What do we have to,
It's a bureaucratic process. The FEMA has approved the plan, but wants the select board to approve a certificate of adoption, and then FEMA will officially approve the plan. It is.
And we've approved.
Yeah.
yes.
FEMA says, well, now we want you to approve it and wave the magic wand over it and say,
Did you mean it?
for sure, really, did you mean it?
So why don't we remake the motion to, what's different about this one? Approve the certificate?
Certificate of adoption.
Okay. Is there, it's on the back.
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of adoption pertaining to the 2017 county and town all hazard mitigation plan.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Excuse me?
What's wrong with my hand?
I didn't hear any comments. Go ahead. Well, yes, Robert.
This is the one that the select board reviewed, I don't know, what was it, a month ago?
Yeah.
Chris Davis was involved.
Yep.
And the county does a fair amount of the work. Chris had some input. The select board approved it.
Yep.
But is this for transportation of materials on roads?
No.
It's for all kinds of stuff. It's a giant umbrella thing that the county, it's basically to get FEMA funds.
It's a required update process that counties have this, otherwise FEMA won't reimburse anything if there's a natural disaster. And so, see, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission I think it's a 5-year schedule, and they're on the schedule.
That's all it pertains to.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was no new edits or input from the, specific input from the town of Charlotte to this mitigation plan that I saw.
Okay, we're on to the Thompson Point leases. We did vote, actually.
Oh, I heard the vote, but I didn't hear anybody.
Oh, everybody
aye.
say aye?
Aye.
Okay. Do you want to do it, how do you want to do this? Do you have the originals from Mary then?
Also, I'm pretty sure, maybe Dean, you can speak to it, I don't think anything about that mitigation plan was regulatory. It was really all planning.
Yeah. This planning, we want to do this, and we're looking out for that, and we're doing the best we can.
This is where a good shelter place is. And
The certificate needs select board chair, select board member, and town clerk. Sign it.
What did you say?
And town clerk.
What are you making a friendly amendment? Is that what you just did? Oh.
Oh, I'm just telling you right now.
Somebody's,
It's gonna have to be more than one person that signs it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So ready to go for the Thompson Point leases? These are just, well, the first two are just update, they're renewals, right? Are there motions? Lot 122?
Motion to approve.
sure, I'll
The
make a
lease?
motion to, what am I doing, approve or renew a 20-year lease to Richard M. Detweiler and Sandra F. Detweiler for lot 122 at 906 Flat Rock Road.
Second.
Is that seconded? Okay. Any discussion about that? Authorize the chair to sign?
That sounds like a great idea.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye?
Aye? Okay. Okay, the next one is Lot 58. Donald Bicknell, is there a motion there?
Forgot to see the building torn down. Sure, I'll make a motion to approve, renew a 20-year lease to Donald S. Bicknell for Lot 58 and 1/2 of Lot 61 at 192 Flat Rock Road.
Okay, authorize the chair to sign?
Yep.
Okay.
Geez, you think I'd remember that after half a dozen of these?
Any
Of course, I
questions?
came a half hour late, what else could I say?
All in favor, say aye.
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 This is a little different format, Dean, needs to be notarized, so should I sign it in front of Mary?
Sure.
Okay. The next one is Lot 127 at Flat Rock Road. Do we have two of them here, 127?
One termination and then renewals for lot 127, half of lot 158.
Okay.
Can we give it away free?
Sure.
Make a motion to terminate lot or terminate the lease to Norm Ernsting and Nina Kucheri at Lot 127, 102 Flat Rock Road.
You want to do both of those in one, to terminate and to approve?
That's different, so let's
Okay.
do them separately.
Okay.
And have the chair sign it.
Okay. So that's,
Got it.
that's the termination.
Yep.
Has that been seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And the last one.
I'm on a roll. I'll make a motion to approve a 20-year lease to Nina Kucheri for Lot 127 and one half of Lot 128 at 102 Flat Rock Road.
Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. This one needs a notary too, so I'll just stop by tomorrow sometime. Select board updates.
My yearly review of bridges and the state reports that now the state wants us to paint some of the beams that were rusty before, because I don't think they had anything else to put on there.
Oh, wow.
So they want us to paint the beams, I think, on 3 of the bridges. So I don't know if I don't think we have any money in a budget for that, if we want to. I don't think it really needs it. They've been rusty for 20 years. They're not deteriorating that much, but I suppose in an ideal world, you'd put a paint or some sort of rust sealer on them. I mean, once you start painting, then next time you got to start scraping. I think so I guess the update would be that I'm going to look into see what you can get for a rust sealing coating, if that's acceptable, because that's do it one time and you're done with it deal. As an update, but structurally, they said they're all fine. And my other update is that the air pack thing that everybody's curious about is the yearly certification process for all the members is Wednesday night, when they have to demonstrate their proficiency in using those. And if anybody wants to see what they are and what the challenges are and wants to live on the wild side and strap one on and try doing it yourself, starts at 6:30 on Wednesday across the
Are
street.
these complete suits or like an OBA, like in the military, we had these oxygen breathing apparatuses?
It's self-contained. It's same thing as scuba, but there's no SCBA. There's no underwater in the definition, but it's an air pack and a sealing mask. And what the usual certification process is, you basically go through a obstacle course, crawl under stuff, through things in the dark. They close the mask off so you can't see where you're going. And you have to demonstrate how to use it in proficiency and.
I don't think the thing will seal around his beard.
Now, some departments don't allow any facial hair for that reason.
Military, I had to have, couldn't have any.
But you have to,
Strict regulations on that, on
Oh,
where
do
the
they?
mustache should be and everything.
Oh,
yeah, I have to wax mine up, so it's all
Yeah,
over here.
exactly. It has to go
Stays in.
around.
Tickles my nose.
Okay, we have a couple of, any other updates?
I do have one.
Okay.
I emailed out a
Thank you.
request from regional planning to update 2 lists. One is called SEDS, which is Community Economic Development. I'm not sure what the S is, but projects. And the item we have on that list is, it says the town is investigating sites for potential community sewage disposal and drinking water supply in the village and commercial districts. There's not an estimated cost, and it's a long-term timeframe. So if we're going to edit it, I'd say delete the portion about drinking water supply.
That was my question mark. The wastewater committee isn't looking at that
All right.
piece of it.
where did the water come in from, in the town plan?
I guess that defaults to the state's version of overlying water rights. And their version of conflict with adjoining wells or adjacent wells. That's all state rules.
So what did you just make a recommendation to us?
On the SEDS list to leave it on there, but delete the words that say drinking water supply and leave the community sewage disposal as something that's being investigated. On the, what's called the MTP or Metropolitan Transportation Plan, there's 4 items. The Route 7 project, which is just about done, but they've recommended to just leave that on for any final punch list items. There's a US 7 Ferry Road intersection improvements. They're going to work on the signalization. The state's doing that. There's a Burlington to Charlotte bike and pedestrian path along the railroad. It's likely that's going to be deleted because that's been sort of something that was thought of years ago and nothing's really happening on it, and doesn't seem like it's likely that that's going to happen.
Now that they want to put faster and bigger trains on it, that's
I thought
probably,
there's propane storage tanks on the.
probably a good idea to keep the trail away from that fast-moving, heavy train.
Yeah. And then the
Just a thought.
Charlotte Park and Ride, which is actually, what's on there is really if the town wants to do a town park and ride, not a state park and ride. For, the ballpark estimate was 215,000. So, the time frame is 2035. It's nothing that's imminent. It's.
I'm confused. Is that referencing the one that the CCRPC did?
No, they did a study. They initially,
Well, through Du Bois and King?
they initially were considering a potential town park and ride and a state park and ride. And since the state was paying for the study, the state said, we're really interested in the state park and ride. So Du Bois and King was required to change the study to just consider a state park and ride. And so they didn't actually, they evaluated 5 or 7 sites, but the plan that they depicted was really a state park and ride.
So I'm confused why this one would be on there at all.
It was on, I think, back when originally the idea of a park and ride was thought of as either a town park and ride or a state park and ride, and this list was being generated around that time. So regional planning put it on just in case there was any funding that was needed or what. It was a possibility of being either a town or a state.
Well, I haven't heard of it in 4 years. I would have them strike it.
I would too.
Okay.
This is the park and ride on the bottom there?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything
I don't know
about
what
this.
we're gonna do about,
So,
we're gonna need parking
should probably let
in the villages.
regional planning know that
But that's
there's
not park and ride with a bus showing up.
there's no effort to look into this.
So you're asking us for our comments, so we're giving it, right?
Right,
So you recommended deleting drinking water on that first page.
right.
And then Matt suggesting delete that number 29, park and ride.
And hopefully by 2035, there'll be aerial, personalized commuting options.
I
Subterranean
thought you were gonna say there's
parking.
gonna be a Brookfield.
So
We're gonna tear down and,
I heard Carrie, you were saying about parking areas, but is that anything you're feeling is,
That's different than a
That's
park and
different,
ride.
yeah. Well,
it could or couldn't be. I
sort
mean,
of. I mean, I've had some different thoughts over the last year about park and ride, because the villages need parking as they grow. So,
Do you want to leave it on, or?
no, not necessarily, I'm just saying that I feel like
Do you want more
parking is-
information? Do you want more information or discuss anything?
Well, I think we should, I don't know, because we're gonna need parking in the villages somewhere, so we might need to,
I mean,
you know, you could change this one to what Terry's saying. Just say parking, East and West Charlotte Village. Are you allowed to change what's here?
Yeah.
That's true.
Let's change it to project type to just parking.
There you go.
Town parking.
Town parking. People parking.
But I wouldn't say just Ferry Road and Route 7, I'd say in the village,
I
or
think-
villages.
Park and ride is misleading.
Yeah, we don't want I think the place where the bus shows up, picks you up is kind of dead in the water. But parking is a different thing. You don't have to worry about accommodating a bus.
Well, this thing is called a need identified in scoping, so that is a need we're gonna have, parking.
Okay, and then I know
So,
there hasn't been
well,
any decision on it, and they're
Could
split.
Can we clarify that?
Oh, sure.
So it's going to say Charlotte, and it's going to say parking
Yeah.
for project type,
Or town parking, or parking? Parking.
Village, I'd say village parking.
Village.
village parking, okay? And then,
Villages,
Villages.
or something like that.
uh,
Yeah, the
project is going to be
Well, that would be the village.
adequate parking and village designations?
Sure.
Adequate parking in the villages.
Okay. And then the cost estimate should be a question mark?
It may be a question mark.
Question mark.
Okay, let's have that be a question mark.
And then make that 225.
Yeah.
Change the year to,
2025?
yeah, 2025. So we gave you suggestions, but
Okay, great. I wondered about putting on the state park path. I know, state park road path, I know it's not, decided. Select board members have different opinions. Being on this list doesn't obligate the town, but if the town were to apply for a grant, it's beneficial to be on the list.
oh, so you're saying we should put that on as an addition?
I'm suggesting that, yeah.
State Park Road?
Yep.
I would just say West Town Link Trail, because we haven't even cited that as
Yeah.
the most appropriate place on
Okay.
State Park Road. And that kind of.
At least you're identifying
Just
it,
put
yeah.
Town Link Trail, and then
Town
if we
Link
got
Trail.
to link it somewhere else, we can,
Yeah, it might be through there were 3 that they identified, and
well, and there might be another
Only
section
one?
of the trail somewhere else that becomes the hot ticket next year, who knows?
right, which there's 2 more sections between co-housing
We
and
just
here.
Call it Town Trail.
I think that broadens the scope, opportunity.
Are you good with that, Dean?
Yeah, that's what I'll suggest, yep.
Any other updates? Want to just go through the minutes quickly? November 27th?
Ellis Roofing is here for,
Oh, the chairs, that was going to be, we never got to the select board budget.
Yeah, so we could look at
okay, that's part of the select board budget, okay.
On December 18th, here's a draft agenda.
That's why I was late. I had an old agenda on top of my pile, and it said started at 7. I just didn't look at the date. I'm thinking, damn, I don't have to go to 7. Cool. Wrong date. And Lane had to call me.
We were all sitting here. We heard you. We heard the whole thing.
Uh-oh.
So there's time on the agenda for budget discussion. I had earmarked it as recreation facilities, and then I was anticipating the whole budget, but at 7:30 to 8:15, so 45 minutes to split between recreation facilities and select board.
Wait, say it again?
7:30 to 8:15, he's going to add in select board right here. You should also add in zoning administrator.
I don't know if we'll have. any
Only
info
if,
on that.
only if they can meet, but otherwise their next regularly scheduled meeting's the 21st, which is that Thursday, the Thursday of the same week. It sounded like Peter thought they would be able to meet.
Yeah, he was going to try to.
Yeah.
I think, frankly, I think it's only going to take a few minutes. It should be a vote on our part, up or down.
And actually, on this agenda, I penciled in CCRPC FY19 UPWP, which is the Unified Plan and Work Plan, which is basically their yearly plan for next fiscal year where they ask us if we want anything, assistance with anything.
For example,
Traffic studies, safety.
Speed studies.
Village parking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Village parking.
So they're going to come here and talk about it, or?
No.
We could make recommend.
Yeah.
So we just came up with a couple, right?
There's too many letters in that sentence without a word there. There should be some vowels or something, should there?
Okay. Everybody, same other comments? So you're going to add the zoning thing someplace?
Yeah, and just to run through that, so everyone's aware of the times, there's a site visit for a highway access permit on Heinsberg Road. It'll be staked, so you don't have to be there at 3 o'clock if you want to go by some other time.
Okay.
And then meeting at the library, to discuss the library expansion at 6 PM.
Okay.
Is that some official meeting?
It is. Well,
Is there a
it-
board of directors or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
But it'll be warned for us to be there, too.
Yes.
Okay.
We're a motley crew. Everybody's got to get warned before we show up.
I don't expect any action taken at 6 o'clock,
There-
so 7 o'clock.
Are we observing their meeting?
No, they want to hear your feedback. They're providing information, and they want feedback on whether they should proceed.
1824 Heinsberg Road, is that across from the bean farm?
It is.
Okay, minutes? So I have motion to approve the minutes of November 27th, as may be modified.
Second?
Okay, anybody have any feedback, comments? Nothing heard? All in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Motion for November 30th minutes as may be modified.
Sounds like a good idea. I'll move that.
Okay, it's a one-pager. How much for this one? All in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
You're abstaining, you weren't here?
Correct.
And is there a motion on the other side of that piece of paper, in the minutes of December 5th? I was here.
So moved.
Okay. Okay. All in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of December 5, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstaining? Good. Anything else to be brought up before the board? Couple of warrants.
I would like to thank Dean. The town administrator's reports have been very helpful. I appreciate that.
So my only summary is, so for town plan, if we have corrections inputs, we're just gonna, are you gonna have a master book for
Changes?
changes? I mean, there's, from my point of view, I saw a lot of corrections. I mean, you're gonna have a master book? You want my book, or?
It does get confusing if you do like an underlined strikeout, then you see, but I can understand that people would want to know exactly what the changes are. So it does seem like a list of edits is probably the
Like
way
in
to
the
go.
form of a list? So the ones that we have are this one dated November.
Except we had different pages. It would have been nice if this came in meeting minute form, or whatever they call it,
Yeah,
legal
with-
form, where everything's got a number, line, page number.
Oh, yeah, line numbers.
Oh, yeah.
I think you could reference, I think it's pretty close. It may, the pagination may be slightly different, but if you reference this page and the section number, for example, if it's, wildlife habitat, page 35, wildlife habitat, paragraph, or bullet 3, or
We'll
that,
find it if we get pretty close. So we're just going to do that in the form of an email with these edits that we think are corrections.
yeah.
And we're all going to include our own personal ones?
Yep.
That's what I mean.
And
Mine
have,
are not earth-shattering, just.
do we have a end
Deadline?
time?
Why don't you aim for next Monday?
Okay.
Have them to you by next Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a new paragraph or something, just write it out then, I guess you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And then somebody's taking care of the maps.
Yeah.
Is that you?
Sound like a,
Well, I'm involved with that.
sound
yeah.
like a real problem.
What, getting everything
The
done, right?
maps. Huh?
Getting everything done?
No, the maps.
Yeah, and the maps being part of it, it seems to me it's confusing.
See, we done? Motion to adjourn?
And watch the Patriots. Go Patriots.
Somebody's got to second it.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Don't have to ask me twice.
Thank you.